Welcome to another episode of the Paragon Path. This is our special episode on the Battle Game Night. We've got three amazing guests here to talk about their opinions of the Battle Game Night, what could potentially happen with it, how to avoid toxicity, and other opinions on it. We also get two special guests from the Award Standardization Committee, Lady Lightning and Sir Magnus, to talk to us about the proposal in its details. So enjoy, stick around. If you got opinions, put them in the comments.
We are recording. All right, welcome to we're not numbering this one. This is a special episode of Paragon Path, the Battle Game Night. We have three guests that are going to discuss with us about the potential changes to the game, what this Battle Game Night proposal does, what it means, and their opinions and takes. Now, I kind of handpicked these people because they are experienced. They have been through the game for multiple versions. They also have they're on that path of the potential Battle Game Night. So they have kind of an inside scoop of what it's going to look like, how the working towards Paragon, working towards the potential Battle Game Night is going to feel, and what we need to be aware of to, so that we don't run into toxicity problems in the future. But that'll be one of our last questions, because I always have putting questions about make your park better, don't cause problems. So first off, we're going to have everyone introduce themselves, and we're going to start with Augustus.
Hi, I'm Augustus. I typically just go by Gus. I've been in the game I started when I was 14, so that means 16 or 17 years now I've been in this game. I'm a warlord, sword knight, and crown knight out of the Iron Mountains. Yeah, that's about it. I don't know what else you want to know.
No, that's good. We'll go next to Lily below him.
My fancy Amp Guard friends, I am the Sir Death Lily Megatron Sunshine, Sword Knight of the CK. I've been doing the wacky bats since like 2012, I think, something like that. Almost a decade, or a decade now. I don't know. It's close. I can't remember exactly when I started. Stoked to join y'all in this special vid about the Battle Master thing. We'll see how that goes.
It's going to be an interesting episode. We haven't done an open discussion like this. So, I mean, the closest thing is something that Cad's Teflon and I did at the end of the Druid episode, which was just riff for like an hour on battle games.
Yeah.
So, that'll be interesting. To mention, Teflon.
Yeah, I'm Teflon Frosthammer. Some of you might recognize me from the Whack podcast. Paragon Druid, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, other than that, just kind of a chill dude.
All right. So first we have to, as always, if we're asking people to achieve a goal, we need to let them know what that goal is, what are the check marks along that way. So you guys are unfamiliar with the Battlemaster and Night, the Battle Game Night proposal. I would highly recommend finding it. I'll see if we can quickly link that in the chat for y'all. I saw Lightning was in here earlier. She also should have access to some of these fun things because she's in charge of it. And thank you, Lightning, for doing data-driven information. Like, we need it. It's amazing. And it's really good to have the data so that we can have these discussions and have, background. Let me see if I can link this real quick for you guys. Otherwise, basically, the idea is a path towards a belt, and it's either a fifth belt. Currently it is proposed as a fifth belt, not a secondary path on sword. But I know that several kingdoms would like it under sword, and other kingdoms are very adamant that it's a fifth belt. But it's a path to be a knight where excellence in battle games, not just one class, not just one style, excellence in battle games overall will get you to that point. There's a lot of reading involved in the proposal, so I'm not going to read it out to you because that just takes way too much time for us. Pause the video, read it over. If you're listening to us live, try to catch up. Otherwise, our guests have all read the proposal. They're moderately familiar with it at least. So we want to know, what are your initial opinions on this like just surface level opinion thoughts on this idea of a battle game night and the direction of making battle games a path towards knighthood. We'll start with Gus.
I love the overall concept. I think this is necessary. I hate the proposal. I think it's going about the wrong way. I can go, and we'll go into more detail. What was that?
So just give us a little bit of why you dislike it.
I don't like the idea of tying Paragon. I don't like the idea of tying specific classes to it, because there are non-class based games that I would expect someone who is seeking knighthood for recognition of their skill of battlefield prowess and their ability to do teamwork. And those games that don't use classes. So why have classes be a requirement? Because then you're pigeonholing it down to only class games. And it also ruins Paragon, I think.
As like it's a extra path, or it's too competitive, or the toxicity, is that what you're worried about?
I'm worried about competitiveness and toxicity. New players love Paragon. It's something they love to strive for. If now you're suddenly tying it to knighthood, now you're suddenly going to have this toxicity, because frankly, I don't think it's the ultimate goal is to remove toxicity from knighthood, but it's going to be hard to achieve. And now we're just going to be directly implanting that toxicity into the Paragon path, something that new players just utterly love and strive for and want. And now they're going to have to be competitive with these people that want to just go after the belt or the knighthood. And they're going to have different ideas of what it means because of that toxicity of pursuing the belt and the competitive that goes with it.
Right. I mean, we saw that toxicity, especially when the transition. Oh, I don't remember when the transition was. When the change from the kind of open-ended version of Warlord happened to the locking down of you have to do this tournament, this tournament, this tournament, this tournament. We saw a lot of that toxicity and a lot of that solo play start to be really heavy. I know that was just before my time, but do you guys remember seeing that kind of initial change that happened?
I was right around the time I started, I believe, and I was too new to the game to know.
I think that puts Jamie just a little bit too young as well. Teflon, did you see it, or were you on your break at that time?
I think that was when I was on my break, so I didn't get the initial look at it.
Okay. I know from talking with older amp guarders and newer amp guarders that the ditch line is kind of starting to die, and a lot more bear pits and solo fights are being more popular. I'm wondering if we'll see almost a reverse of that now that battle games will be real popular because you need them in order to prove that you're good. Are those going to be the new transition?
As long as it's not tied to Paragon, I think so, because the current proposal is tied to Paragon, which means ditch fields, militia games, all those you technically can't get recognized for if it's tied to Paragon because there's no classes.
Right.
I mean, you can get your earlier ones, but you can't get your high level. You can't recognize someone that's just insane on the ditch with this. And if they're insane in battle games as well.
Right. Jamie, what's your thoughts? Lily, what's your thoughts?
So it gets missed, and I was trying to find it real quick, so I was half paying attention. Sorry. But as it stands in our rules of play, it is all of the award standardization is a recommendation. It's not as written. The first paragraph there, I'm pretty sure, says that this is just an example of things that can be done to achieve these awards, which tells me that battlefield prowess works anyways. So if anyone wants to go ahead and battlefield prowess someone to warlord, they could. It's just culturally not accepted right now. We have the freedom to give people awards for essentially anything, and a fun cultural example of this when you look at like warlord versus or a sword knight versus serpent knight is, for whatever reason, it is turned into, to get a serpent knight you must win like Dragon Master. Well, if they want a Dragon Master, well, they can't be a serpent knight if they haven't won Dragon Master. Well, our rules of play don't even use that as an example of how to get yourself a serpent belt. That's just taking over the competitive nature of what warlord or sword knight was, and then starting to turn it into like, well, you have to do this thing. Well, it doesn't say that. And even then, again, it's a recommendation as far as that like second or first paragraph says. It's in there somewhere. I'm pretty sure Megiddo wrote that part, And we had talked about it over like a 36-hour drive. How it's like people can kind of give awards for whatever they want if they chose to. But again, the culture of the game has been to shame those who don't follow a certain way or a certain culture, a certain tradition, and that's not good. Like that's automatically pretty toxic to begin with. So when it comes to this new kind of proposal for making, I would say, Sword Knight more accessible to the majority or a more mass minority, I suppose. I don't know. It's weird. I don't know the right word to say that.
Hmm.
I don't think it's a negative necessarily. I don't see anything wrong with some exclusivity when it comes to certain things. It's part of the drive for being invested and working real hard to, do the best that you can do when it comes to anything that you do. The competition helps push people to try harder, and
Yeah.
that can lead to a toxic environment and whatever. But so, anyways, I'm open to the idea. I think there's nothing wrong with making things more accessible. But I don't know why we wouldn't just go back to making Griffins another path to Sword Knight then. Like it was already a path to Sword Knight. We should find ways to make it fun to be honorable on the field and to not be a cheaty little butthole.
Yeah, we would all like cheap little buttholes to go away. So this discussion came up, fighter practice or something. How do you define getting better at honor? Like, and this,
Well,
this is a
so
general question for all of you guys. Like, if not cheating in a tournament is a 1, does not cheating in another tournament be a 2? Like, does it that kind of thing, or do you have to keep expanding like other ones?
well, I think it falls kind of into the same idea that quality of character is this like prerequisite for knighthood. That's hard to define anyways, because you're saying like, well, is this guy a raging d bag or are they kind of a cool cat? And ultimately, if people go out and play and they are cheery and positive, I mean, yeah, what's the levels of this? Maybe there's it's not easily defined, but like it's not like there was that many people that were getting through on Griffin Knights, like Griffins specifically. There wasn't that many in the past, and what would it increase the number by like 10% as the number of like people that maybe have been getting Griffins right now? It wouldn't flood, you know, the Sword Knight belt with a whole bunch of people, and it would then give people a chance to sort out the details. I'm not saying it's perfect, but the system already existed before. I'm sure it's possible to find a way. Like if people want to be more generous on the field, I don't see a problem with it. And generosity can come anywhere on the field in battle games. It can come
Yep.
in the tournaments. It's literally a universal thing that they could be doing. And right now I have no real reason to be nice other than that that's good to be nice, I guess. Yeah, that's
I'd even go as far to define it more with tie it into communication too.
Oh yeah.
When it comes to fighting, like an open line of communication, willing to talk things out, and that just boils down to clean fighting. Where if there's some kind of confusion, you stop, you kind of talk it out in a polite manner and come to a reasonable conclusion that both parties accept and agree with. Hopefully, accept and agree with.
I mean, I think that's a factor that'll reduce toxicity in our game in general. It's just teaching our new players, especially, to communicate where they were struck, what happened, why they didn't take it, why they did take it, things like that. Because there's nothing more frustrating than throwing a shot you're pretty sure landed, but them not making any response to it, not making any indication that it happened, it didn't happen, whatever. It's very frustrating, and that just keeps building to the point that people start getting mad. So I'm
well,
hoping.
if they're not communicating, then absolutely. Like
Yeah.
it's I don't necessarily even care if somebody tells me that a shot I was fairly certain hit, that it didn't hit them, because at least they communicated with me.
Right.
If they say, on the
Or if
hand,
it was
like,
just like a bad shot for some reason
It
on their end.
grazed, it didn't
Cool.
stop, whatever
Excellent.
it was.
Thank you for telling me. I will be better next time.
Mm-hmm.
I know how to adjust this.
the communication between two people that are fighting when they're actually communicating, whop, hand, okay, whop, block, okay. It's
Yep.
really pretty fast, unless there's something really that needs to be talked about when it comes to like timing or something. And even then, if you're already getting into a timing discussion, you're way ahead of the people that are pretty frustrating who can't have a discussion anyways, who just don't know or don't understand or haven't been working on it because it wasn't enforced, I guess, for them as they're not enforced. That sounds worse than it is. Not a part of the general culture of the individual's upbringing in Amtgard.
Honestly, timing is a very learned skill and a very taught skill, and very specifically, right?
Yeah.
You get with people who are fighting constantly, and they understand the timing of when a rep shot doesn't count versus when it does. Things like that. Whether or not you started a shot before you got hit can be very minuscule, so it's hard to say for people who are new to figure out that timing. They don't have any idea about it, so some of it is just your park in general.
Yeah.
On the opposite end, it's always entertaining to watch two high-end fighters. One of them talking about why their shot wasn't good, and the other one talking about why it was good, and they're just they're having that debate. That's fun to watch.
It is always painful to be fighting with someone and the other individual to have to justify why they shouldn't have to take your shot.
Yep.
Like that's
and them wanting to.
It's such a weird. I mean,
it's a good thing, I think, because it's just
openness of communication.
Yeah. And it's the openness of communication, but it's definitely weird.
I don't mind it when the person's trying to argue for why they should die versus why they shouldn't die, because one of those things involves them being like generous versus going, well, I don't think I should have to take that. And it's like, but it touched your wiener. Like that seems like a shot that you should probably die on. But I guess it wasn't hard enough. So, okay, you win. I would rather see people, and when we get to like the more technical stuff, like whether they started to pull back, got hit, then threw, then turned, or whatever, and they're throwing with a dead arm. Asking the new player, or asking, not even the new player, the person who's maybe just less developed in that particular matter, or just maybe they're just as developed but they perceive it differently, and saying like, hey, do you think that was in time? I'm putting the ball in their court to tell me that they feel like they were still in time or not. And if they say yes, I've accepted. I've given up my right to say whether that shot was good or not by saying like, hey, do you think that was good? And if they say yeah, I'm like, okay.
I know this is completely off topic, but that's actually a great approach to taking with new writers, for them to think about those options and start thinking about it and opening that communication up about whether or not something was good or bad.
And I think we're
I'd encourage that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think we're going to start seeing that, especially if we hold people to a similar accountability on the battlefield of like, you've got to be respectable, you've got to be teaching, you've got to be like, we start holding these paragons or people on the Paragon path to a similar level, I think we'll get a similar response in the spell casting and the ability use of our game, where I might cast something at someone and they'll be like, nope, 21 feet, I'm out of your range. And just like simple communication stuff.
Anybody pushing for knighthood should be doing that anyways, in my opinion.
Yes.
Like, since I believe character matters for having the belt, and if you're not already being generous anyways, then I just think you're a step behind. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that they have to necessarily. It's weird to say that someone needs to have a certain personality to do a specific thing, and that's becomes exclusive, and I want it to be inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, I think doing the teaching and the positivity thing, and reinforcing parts of the rules, or just being human. This isn't a computer game. Like, we're gonna miss some verbiage here and there. We're gonna stumble a little bit. Not everybody speaks as clearly or as well as everybody else. It's not wrong to say, hey, you missed that part. There's a teachable moment. This is actually what the verbiage is, but I'm taking it anyways. Great job.
Mm-hmm. On the flip side, encouragement. On the flip side, I would expect someone that when pointed out that they mumble mouthed, or they're out of range, just to be like, oh, okay, my bad. Thank you for letting me know.
Don't take it, or whatever. Like, that's also then putting it, again, we're giving the ball to the person, giving them the opportunity. Mm-hmm. Like, we can only control what we do, and if they decide to be positive too, that's fantastic. Like, there's nothing.
No, I'm saying like if someone's a knight or a candidate for knighthood, like I would expect them, if called out like, hey, you kind of mumbled that a little bit, I couldn't clearly understand you, to be like, okay, cool, got it, I'll be better next time, don't take that.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
Like, so it goes both ways.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of directions. So, Teflon, what are your takes on this initial proposal?
Like, I'm very much for a battle game night. Our rulebook has like 80% of it or something dealing with battle games in general, right? So having that part of it not represented in our upper echelon of awards and things has kind of always been a weird thing to me.
Mhm.
This one I feel like is so close, but as they said too, tying it to Paragon is kind of weird because we're just now establishing what Paragon truly means. Like we had class masterhoods before, but
Bang,
they
bang,
weren't
bang.
held to any kind of standard or anything like that. Not saying that if you got a masterhood before you weren't good or anything, because some of them legitimately were, but some of them maybe were just specifically portraying the class. And maybe that's another route to look at it at the same time, right? But the way this one builds off is it's being good at battle games, and I actually didn't even think about the like militia or ditch rules and things like that. So that's something I agree on just on listening to I believe Augustus, right, talking
Mhm.
about that.
We're introducing people here.
Yeah. um, so that's a really interesting section I just didn't even think about at all because I hear Battle Game Night and I only think of class games. And I don't know if that's a reasonable thing or not.
I think
I
it
would say
is.
what it's what a third or so of the games at major events are militia based usually, or maybe a quarter.
It depends
That's
on
still
where
a
you're at.
sizable portion.
We
Well,
we
maybe
actually
I
have
cave.
somebody. I'm sorry. We have someone in the chat actually here that is a stellar example of somebody on the ditch field who does fantastic work there, and it's dying art right now in Amtgard. I know that for at least the last half decade, the amount of ditching or the longevity of the ditch or the size of the ditch has fallen off. And as someone who's traveled to uh, well, every SKBC I could go to since I started, every keep since I started, all lots of Spring Wars. The numbers have just gotten smaller and smaller. And in my first like 5 years, it was nuts. You'd have a ditch until 3 or 4 in the morning, sometimes later, and then we do it all again the next day.
Yep.
And there's some
I
people who
miss
really
those
shined
days.
at that and were stellar,
Yep.
stellar examples of what this is. And it's interesting to not include all of this. Hell, I've become much less good at ditch fighting and much better at single one-on-one fighting, and it kind of sucks. I want to be able to fight multiple, lots of guys all at the same time, and just like flying around and doing crazy stuff, and being that cool hero guy on the field like we see in so many films, and it's not really rewarded. But
So
yeah, anyway.
I'm the newest player in this chat at the moment, but I mean, besides people that may be newer, I mean, technically, if I'm looking at this, Vidalia is the newest. She's only been in for what, a year, 2 years now. But Ditch was introduced to me. I'm 5 years in the game as a warm-up game, not as a game you focus on playing or you expect to like spend a lot of time playing on practice day on park days. So I'm wondering if that's part of a side effect is that people started looking at Ditch as something other than a potential chance to do a teamwork, multi-person fighting, variable weapon fighting, and like different line fundamentals. I'm wondering if that transition has been pushing people away from the Ditch line and more into battle games because they've just been introduced to Ditch as it's not a
I
real
don't
battle game, it's just a warm up.
I don't know. I know the ditch started, at least in my perspective, the ditches started dying off right around the time the latest rule book came out, and that's when really battle games were emphasized.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people really just wanted a battle game because it was new, exciting. The rules were better for new players. Like you didn't have new players sitting off on the sideline for 5 minutes because they died. They could get back in it. It was a faster paced battle game versus ditching was great because it's fast paced. If a new player died, they're out 30 seconds to a minute, they're back in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now it's the same thing with Battlefields, and there's other rules for battle games, I should say. Now there's other rules, like they can still excel and be useful to their team beyond just if they're not good at fighty wax.
True. So I mean, V8 was let's make that a discussion point. We've gone through the first little bit, but that's a really good point. Is the V8 rule set transitioned a lot of focus away from the militia, from the ditch. Um, Not really tournament; those are still really focused. But the militia and the battle game, the militia and the ditch were kind of pushed off to the sideline a lot in V8 rules because the core Magic rule set was so good and efficient for new players to come out and be able to constantly be on the field. They could die, they'd be back in less than a minute. Nobody's spending 5 minutes of time either stuck in an ice ball or like unable to move for something. Like there are some stories of like stacking spells on top of people from V6.
Y'all
and
remember
7.
petrify balls?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I have been told
Forgot
about
those
about
are
them.
bad.
Do not like them.
Yeah. You're now out until you die.
There was a ton wrong with 7-7
Yeah.
and before. I
Yep.
mean, again, the game's ever evolving and it'll continue to change and evolve and whatever.
As
But
it should.
holy cow. Yeah, you just remind me of all the oof.
Yeah. But I would counter your argument because even militia games are still fast paced. They still shorten the death count
Yes.
or made the rules to get back in to the point where it's friendly to new players. That's what the new rule set did, and the new thinking about how to run games. That new mentality of let's be as friendly to new players as possible by not making them sit on the sideline, like making them be able to participate. And if they die because they're new, they're still being effective and they'll get back in.
Mhm.
I mean, as a veteran, I love new players because I can just sit back and tell them, you go do this, you go do this. I'm going to sit right here. You've got all the energy.
You make that like 18-year-old who's real hyped do the sprinting.
Yeah. Yeah. You go get that flag. And then if they press you, I'll come help you. I'll kill them all. But you go run.
I think that's a good way to look at a lot of training a new player aspect is the vets have been here for a while. We understand the game, the fundamentals, things like that. But giving, and Jamie, you mentioned it in a couple other episodes, letting the new kid be the hero and like helping them achieve that goal is super cool and helps them want to come back. I mean, especially from my perspective, that feels, I play support, so that always just shades that. I always want to help someone else do better. So like I don't want to be the all-star, but making other people, especially new players, be all-stars is fantastic.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, so we've kind of defined we've got the battle game night proposal in the chat. What it is, what it does. We've defined it, and we've kind of given our surface level thoughts. So we've mentioned it before. Because it's tied or leaning on Paragon very heavily, this is going to fundamentally change how kingdoms look at Paragon. Because up until this point, I would say it's, even though we gave better standards in V8, they've still been fairly loose relative to like Warlord or Master of Rose, Smiths, Owls, anything else like that. Those are all more defined and have a more direct path, where Paragon has been kind of its own floating goal without a stepping stone to it. Now, Iron Mountains did, and I stole this from Iron Mountains and brought it to Polaris, the Order of the Tactician, which kind of gives you a stair step to it, but it's not like you take Tactician and you go straight to Paragon. It's more of a guiding line that gets you to that point.
Can I interject?
Yeah.
I absolutely love the Tactician. I think that's the way to go to get to a battlefield knighthood.
Okay.
Because it's loosely defined and it's generalized around, being a good teammate, being good at helping others, coming up with tactics, overall battlefield prowess. It's not tied to specific classes.
Mm-hmm.
I would expect like a battlefield knight to be, it didn't matter what he played. If he never even swung his sword, never used a single ability of his, was able to dominate the field just by telling people what to do, great. That person may be a paragon, but they didn't use any of their classes. They just told people what to do and had great tactics and intuition and helped others be the hero.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I love the Tactician as the idea for getting there.
Instead of the...
Sorry for the interruption.
What is this called?
Instead of Paragon. Grail.
Yeah,
it's called the Grail.
Because, so it's got battlefield prowess on it, but I think the thing that I really liked from the Tactician, and one of the main reasons I stole it, was it heavily pushes teamwork and moving past just one person being an influence. Like, I mean, if we put 30 people on the field and only 2 of them are warlords, those warlords are probably going to start running through those 30 people. They're gonna have a bigger impact on the field just because of game experience.
Well, but being competitive is really important, man. Like,
Yes.
and it's such a trip because I had to make adjustments to my own play style based on the people around me, and I had to ask them whether or not we're trying to win.
Yes.
Do we care about winning today, and are we being competitive? And there's plenty of times where people are not interested in showing up to do that. And in a team-related game, that's really challenging to say like, no, well, that's cool that you want us to go do this, but we just want to go and roll around in the dirt over there, or whatever it is that they want to do. We want to go role play or do our quest. And don't get me wrong, I've done plenty of questing in battle games that have no quests. It's, thank you, Megiddo. We've had so much fun. We went to a Castlemania where we took no weapons. We were shield maidens for Shadow, and he had a pole, and we just insulted people and died for him a lot.
I mean, along that same line, one of my favorite games I've ever played, I think actually you were the one running it, Jay. It's where we had the cooler full of weights and we had to push it across. I just told my team, I'm going to pick this up, just stay around me. I'm going to bring it across the line and I'm going to sit on it and just tell you all what to do. I was a paladin with a shield, no armor. I think I might have had an enchantment. And I just sat there pro mag myself. I sat there the entire game just telling my team who to kill and what to do. And I had a blast. Never used a single ability besides pro mag on myself. And it was fun. And my team won, and they had a lot of fun because it was like I could just point out, like, oh, that archer's gonna be a problem. Go kill him. I think that archer was actually Ice, who's in the chat.
I believe this was the same man that Ice sniped me while sitting down from like 30 feet through a window. So
that's awesome.
That site was so cool.
It was. Unfortunately, the army bought it, and now we're SO.
I mean, just sitting there and just letting the kids and the new players just have fun. Wow, it feels weird to say kids. Holy cow, I'm old.
Not that. I mean, everyone is a kid to the old man who is Michael. So we're all kids still. We're all good.
There's a lot of Mikey Beltline in this chat.
Well,
yes,
they're very easy for me to reach. Don't pick on my ability to reach people in Mikey's Beltline.
Well, it's the damn orphanage. There's so many people.
There's a lot of us. There are 70 something. I lost counting. Whatever.
Gross. Anyhow.
So this brings up an interesting thought of mine. If we have those scenarios where people do want to do the role play, and Teflon, you've definitely been a pioneer of making your own style for a class, which I think is super important in Paragon Hood as well, and making you played monsters by playing other classes, which was a great idea. You want to tell everyone about your new idea, the Goblin Paladin?
Oh yeah, so it's pretty basic in a way. I haven't like super developed or anything, but like the idea is to because the whole debate of like opening the class of paladin and anti-paladin up, right? But like I personally want to, but because people have value in words, right? But I also want to show people that you don't need those words specifically, right? So what I'd like to do is like put some foam pauldrons together, like a cape and like maybe a quote unquote holy symbol of something, and then be a goblin who is a legitimate paladin, quote unquote, for something, right? I don't remember. I haven't gotten like all the details ironed out, right? But the idea is to bring the D&D definition of paladin, right, into the field via either, honestly, the easiest one is druid, but it could probably be done with healer as well. The sad part of it is typically when you're doing these monsters based out of classes, all of the magic classes are the way to go because they have the most access to verbal abilities and things like that. So it kind of pigeonholes you still a little bit, not as bad.
But we want this kind of ability to do that in our game. We want these people that want to heavily roleplay or have their own style and be able to do this. I'm bouncing my table. Do this role play, this unique, this their own thing within the class. We want them to still have a space for it. So is it worth kind of breaking down battle game sizes or battle game styles that are viable for getting higher level awards? Like, are we going to say park days you can only get up to X, or is it worth talking about that idea that like at battle game park days you can only get up to X, Kingdom you can start getting up to Y, and then the big finale is Z. You got to go to some inner kingdom event or some real big whatever. Like breaking it down like tournaments.
I mean, it's generally the same format for everything else that we do, so I don't see why it wouldn't follow the same.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
current
but I don't think we
proposal-
need to. I was gonna say I don't think we need to like define it that way. I think the culture of that is fine.
Yeah, this current proposal already kind of does that, or at least for Winter's Edge. Paragon is considered a kingdom level award here, and I think that's something that isn't completely defined as a kingdom level award as well. So that's kind of part of the
Yeah.
issue with this particular proposal that's here.
Yeah, because I think in the Iron Mountains, I may be wrong on this. I haven't looked at the report in 2+ years, but I think in the Iron Mountains, duchies and possibly even baronies can hand out Paragons. I don't know about baronies, but I definitely think duchies can.
I know your duchies can. I recently read the Iron Mountains. Because I'm
Okay.
a psychopath and read Kaporas for fun.
Yikes!
Fix the
I mean,
CK.
I helped write that thing. I should have known, but I should know, but I even can't remember.
The CK could use a rework. You're bored. Make it happen.
I don't have the ability to rewrite Kaporas, but I will read
Sure you do.
them.
Literally anyone can rewrite anything that they want to do. That's the beauty of Amp-Guard. We can do anything outside of being unsafe. Like, the creativity on the field is really up to your imagination. If you want to fight with your swords upside down and pretend you're a praying mantis, you're absolutely welcome to. If you want to try to do a backflip, well, if it's safe, you can do it. You want to dress a certain way, I run around in anime garb all the time. Like,
It is very
there's
true.
there's really no limitation
Yep.
other than your own imagination.
This may be like the thing whenever in like 2007 when the true standardization of awards happened. That is part of the problem, right? Because we have quote unquote standardized everything or tried to. People are wanting to have more quantifiable things than subjective awards, which there is a point to that and is understandable because if it's all subjective, then you don't really have a standard or people's friends just knight people's friends or something like that. But by
You
doing
do that
that,
anyways.
yeah, I mean, true. But by doing that, it makes it really hard for something I feel like this belt, where it's battlefield prowess and this particular proposal, for the most part, until the end, to do something because it's super subjective to some degree. Because like you said, you were a menace on the field by not using your abilities, but to someone on the other side of the field, on the other team, maybe they have no clue that you're giving the orders to the other to your team, right? So they don't see you as doing anything at all, just sitting there.
But that also means they don't have someone looking that's in a similar position on the other side. Because
Yeah.
I mean, from my experience, if I see someone giving orders, that's the first person got to die.
Oh yeah,
That person's
100%.
got to go.
Also,
So
like any
that's
other
kind of-
awards,
Yeah.
like any other awards, guys, we got to recommend people for these awards. And
Recommend. If you see
Absolutely.
something,
Yep.
say something. Like,
Yep.
silence is violence, damn it. Yeah, get out there and give people awards. I mean, it's what it really comes down to. If I was sitting there and I saw Gus, as you prefer now, I'm just proud of myself. I was going to say Augustus.
Yeah.
So.
It's just
but
easier to say.
Yeah, if I were on your team and I saw you doing that and this was something that we can award, just like anything else, and this is where I think culturally this would just start to become natural. We would just start recommending people for these awards because it's now something that we look for. Right now, we don't look for it, so we never see it. We start looking for it because you can get something, my shiny prize. It becomes something that people will start seeing. It just takes a little bit of time, just getting used to it.
And then I wanted to comment on one of the things Stefan said. I thought in the rule book, the only thing that's really truly defined as to like the standard is Warlord. Isn't it with like the service paths? I guess Crown might now be. I haven't looked at it in a bit.
To me, it's all
where
about
really
that first
defined,
paragraph, man.
really-
It just says it's
I mean,
all a
yeah.
suggestion. Everything's a suggestion. That's defined,
Yep.
but the first thing says these are suggestions. So like it's all a suggestion. Do whatever you want.
But I mean, I can't think of a single case where someone broke outside of the suggestions.
I
Unfortunately.
tried to get them to do it for me. I tried really, really hard. I'm like, because Fog was the king and we're buddies and whatever, and buddies giving awards to buddies. Ooh. I'm like, hey man, I'm happy to be the example. Let's just do it. I was at like 8, and I'm like, why not? Like, this is Battlefield Prowess. If I'm there, I'm there. Let's do it. I still continue to play or whatever, and I think I technically used like my defender on my 10th and then won more tournaments after anyways. It just didn't matter. But I was down. I was absolutely down. Like, let's do it. But
I'm down, but I'm also if someone has 8, I mean, personally, I think that should be the qualifier, not the masterhood. But that's a different conversation for a different time.
That is an entirely different conversation with a lot of depth to it that I'll have to dive into later.
All right.
Yeah. Okay, so I've gotten some notes from some of the members of the awards standardization committee, which has been doing the night, the battle night, and technically Paragon is just a recommendation, technically, and the tactician style is absolutely included in this proposal. The wording I have. So I'm wondering if it's from different versions, because the tactician.
I was going to say because what I'm reading right here says Order 7, 1 standard class Paragon and level 6 in that class earned.
Is that the?
It doesn't say recommend. That's literally what this thing says. I mean, I may have a different version, but
sure
there's no I mean, overall, it's a recommendation. Overall, it's a recommendation because of that first line. But in this proposal, it's not a recommendation. It says you need this.
So, okay. So from the data we have, it looks like a lot more kingdoms like the suggested.
kind of makes sense. It gives you some freedom to, play around with what you feel is close enough.
Yes. Okay. I just got shared the final version. Let me.
Oh, did I find the prior to? That's possible.
Potentially, I'm not sure. There's a lot of these versions going around. We want to make sure we're on the
Yeah.
up and up. So, Lightning commented. Okay, affecting kingdom or duchy level class battle gaming. The sample includes effective use of individual team abilities to individual/team abilities to be a key component in victory of a major obstacle during defeat in a kingdom duchy battle game, leading a large unit of multiple small units to successful win in a kingdom or duchy battle game, victory in a kingdom or duchy class battle game tournament. Okay. A 7th order is granted for showing individual or team strategy that has game-changing effect in the kingdom or duchy level battle game. Okay, so we obviously had an old version.
Okay.
Isn't that great to use old information? So, but this is good. Hold on a second. This is a really good teaching/learning moment. We just had a discussion about what we wanted to see, and then Lightning was like, "Hey, we made those corrections." And
thanks, Lightning.
Yay.
You're amazing.
Yes.
I
don't even think I saw this one.
Yeah. Does it actually include the word? Does it include Paragon at all, or just those descriptions?
Battle game night. So it is not Order of the Grail. It is Order of the Battle.
I would say Order of the Battle. Because if it says Order of the Battle, I hate it. I'm sorry.
Order of Battle.
I hate it already.
Order of Battle.
Of the Battle.
I still hate
Order of Battle.
Dyslexia kicking in. Don't pick on me.
No, I'm just.
Paragon has been removed from it. It is a recommendation. It says, a 10th order. So, sorry, it is a recommendation and / kind of tagged in. 8, 9, and 10 have a lot of text about what you could and can't, like what you can and can't do, benefits, a lot of those things, and then the last one is and or earning a Paragon. So,
simple answer: earn a Paragon.
Kind of.
Yeah, that's basically what it's. All those other things are it's going to get disregarded. It's going to get turned in earn a Paragon. That's what it's culturally going to be.
For sure.
Yeah,
unfortunately,
I can see that easily.
Which means it's still tied to Paragon.
It's still, and I hate it. Paragon hits. Yeah.
And I hate it.
Hey, I'm down. I got that. Let's hook me up. I'm ready. More battle.
Well, so this is an interesting thing too, right? Like with Paragons mentioned, Winter's Edge hasn't ever given a second Paragon to anyone. It's kind of seen not as a knighthood kind of thing, but it's kind of seen as you've made Paragon. You just happen to be a Paragon of a class, and so which class is kind of irrelevant in the sense of you've made Paragon already.
Interesting.
But that's more of our culture of looking at it, and I think kind of our circle of Paragons to a certain degree, as well. So that's kind of a weird, interesting thing that's a problem as well. Now, I've made made the argument of like, why are we doing this in some ways? Because it's all tied directly to the class, so not really the title of Paragon. It's a class Paragon as the distinction. So that I don't know if anyone else does that, and I think it's just probably a weird Winter's Edge thing.
I think it's just a weird Winter's Edge thing.
I kind of like the idea though of like, because I've had this discussion with Hodge and Kat about getting your second Paragons because they suck. You almost have to outclass yourself from your first one, at least in Polaris, to get the second one. So like,
the old standard just keeps going up and up and up and up and up, just
that
like
is
anything
also
else.
true.
Just gets
We
harder
need
and
to
harder.
kick it back down because as someone that took that path and was like, hey, I'm gonna do it in 2 years. Don't do that. That's a lot of driving and stress and money.
And it's only if you tie it to a knighthood, it's only going to get worse and more competitive and probably even toxic.
The other big
and it's going to ruin it for new players. I guarantee it.
Yeah, the big negative that I think we keep dancing around is something that we Winter's Edge saw a little bit of with Paragon being a more prestigious award, is that people are going to take the battle games much more serious, and they become less fun just in general because you have people doing things. Yeah, something like Phoenix League. And
we're here for Phoenix League. That's a great invention. Please continue to write battle games for all of us. But like, there's a lot of competitiveness in that.
Yeah, and so people are worried that the fun for the game is going to leave inside a battle game, and I can see that argument for sure. But there's also the culture of driving it as well. So if the people are trying that hard and making it unfun for other people, then they shouldn't have the belt. And awarding it to those who are still making the game fun for others, instead of that, may be an answer. It's a cultural answer and not a like on paper answer, though.
I don't know that I like it very much. It's like saying we're not allowed to be competitive. We can't take this seriously. We can't push hard to better ourselves or be the
a
top
problem as well,
right? Of play, like that's kind of a bummer. I will say that I really like that I've found battle games to be as serious or as silly as you want them to be, though. I really like that about this. Like if I want to bring a bunch of things and go to war at my next Kingdom event, like I have the ability to do that, and it's totally cool. And it's like, okay, cool. We brought a bunch of armor and weapons, and there was an event I brought 300 throwies. Like it's a lot of fun. But it's I have to do this now every single time to every event, and then if it's like, well, I'm crucified because I took it serious, and that's like, where do we?
Yeah, I mean that's
a hard
problem,
line
right?
to walk. A little bit off topic of that, but on topic of what we were just talking about with Teflon. One thing I would actually like to see data behind is how soon new players earn a Paragon.
Ooh, that data would be cool.
Because
that's gonna be interesting.
Because it's probably the first major award a new player can earn. If you think about it, if it's a very prestigious award, it's something that new players love and strive for, they could probably earn it before they'd earn any kind of masterhood, knighthood, anything like that, high-end titles. So that also would be some really good data. Nudge, nudge, Lightning. I think you're probably the only one I know that could do this.
Well,
but I would love to see that data because that would have a negative impact. I don't know how to pull that off. I'm smart, but I'm dumb when it comes to stuff like that.
Why don't we have anything that has to do with our titles? Like, why doesn't that matter?
What do you mean?
Like we have all these titles, like being a baron, a lord, a baron,
Neverwinter,
etc. Why are those pointless and don't lead to knighthood?
Prior to the crown point ladder, prior to the crown ladder, rather, when it was just crown points, Neverwinter actually used the titles to confirm a point for it, basically. So, as far as I understand it anyway, because it's kind of secondhand knowledge, so I don't have it directly. But like, if you,
that's neat.
I would say it's also awesome to be like, well, I'm Grand Duke, Sir Augustus.
Yeah, right.
like, it's fun to just stack titles, but I'm like, okay, that's cool. That's your make-believe fancy pants title. That doesn't mean anything. Good job, guy. You did it.
It's for the crown. You can wear a specific kind of crown.
But nobody does. Like it culturally
Yeah.
right now, it just doesn't
It-
mean anything. It's a super
We need
big
we need
bummer.
more
'Cause-
crowns.
well, I just don't know why that isn't in discussion
Yeah.
at all in the game about that these titles don't lead to their own
They-
kind of knighthood or some
Well,
fancy pants thing. Or why aren't they more meaningful? Like that's just
Yeah.
interesting to me.
the meaningfulness of it becomes a problem, right? The white belt is the shining thing on the end of the stick, right? For the most part, for everyone almost. Some people look at
Unfortunately.
Paragon as a thing too, because they look and see the belts and be like, I don't have any chance to get this, but I have a chance to get Paragon. Thinking about what Gus said, I don't actually think there's only one person that I would classify as a quote unquote new person who got a Paragon in Winter's Edge that I can think of off the top of my head anyway. So I'm really interested to see that too. But again, this is where Paragon's not defined super well, which has its pros and cons. But it's going to result in different kingdoms having different standards for it currently, and which is why I don't like Paragon tied to the proposal. But I don't mind it as much with the final proposal because all the other avenues to take it. But you're not wrong; it will be the one that everyone looks for.
Yeah, they won't care about that. They'll care about Paragon.
Yeah,
It's the simplest. It's easiest to track. That's what they'll look for.
Are we all in agreement or disagreement on whether it should be its own belt, or is that still like in contention, or that it should be another path to sword belt? I can't remember where we stand or
So
where
we
the
didn't cover that
Path to
twice.
sword.
Okay, is that one of the questions? I
That
guess
is
that,
one of the questions. We can. I mean, we've covered the Paragon aspect of it fairly well, and we will, of course, once we open this up, we're gonna bounce around real
Yeah.
fast around and other things. But
that was boogie.
well, yeah, let's talk about the effect of the game of this belt, regardless if it's under sword or not, and whether we think it should be under sword. Because I believe the data shows that the most people don't want it under sword. I really want to know why, because in my opinion, it should be.
Same.
I can give you a quick one. I'll give you my quick opinion. It's most
Go
quick, I
for it.
swear. So I agree with I don't want it to be under sword specifically. I like, and I've always liked the idea of adding more content and creating new things that are fun and achievable, like an expansion to our rules, like in any MMO where we get new classes and new stuff. I would love to see that we were being creative and adding more than just going, well, we'll just tack this on to this other already existing thing. I So it would be fun to have a new belt. I also think it would be fun instead of opening up paladin and anti-paladin to just add 2 new classes to the game in general. Okay, so you have some exclusive classes, sure, great, whatever. That's kind of fun because it's something to strive for at the deep end of playing this game for a decade or something. But then going, well, we've hit 8.5 for our rule set. Now here's 2 new classes, the whatever and whatever, and here's the Battle Knight,
DLC.
and here's our DLC. It's paid though, so that's excellent. You paid DLC. You get costumes though, I suppose, if you pay. But anyways, I think that would be super cool, and that's where I come from for this, as I like adding, not just creating new content, not just dumping onto our existing content. Although I would, if we were going to do that in, let's say, an 8.5, 2 new classes, a new belt, and I would add probably some other path to Sword Knight, whether it be Griffin that existed before or some new defined thing when it comes to just saying, hey, battlefield prowess is enough. Like you can just battlefield prowess to the top if you want. And yeah, maybe somebody gets hooked up, but like, come on, everyone's gonna know that guy got hooked up. Culturally, it's just not gonna really happen. It'll be the guys that are close anyways, that are at like 8 or 9, and they're real good, but they couldn't necessarily beat the guy that's the best in their kingdom. But I don't think that should be a requirement anyways. I don't think that's fair either.
Not just once, 4 times. They have to beat that guy.
Exactly. Like
or they don't have to show up 4 times.
Oh, that's true. Okay,
well,
so
but
we
some
are gonna,
kingdoms,
hold on,
but some
hold on.
kingdoms don't count that.
We're gonna
Some
tag
kingdoms
in
don't
some
count
people
that.
here because they have agreed to go live with us. This is an exciting episode. I love this. All right, so
Hi, Matt.
Lightning is joining us, and Magnus is also going to join us. There are 2 people on the award standardization committee, so they can give us more insight about the proposal and what the proposal does that we may not catch on from like our initial reads. So this is going to be awesome. All right, so because I know you guys have been in the chat listening, we're talking about the discussion of a new belt versus under Sword Knight, and I believe the data was a new belt. I don't remember which slide that's on. Though. Could you guys fill us in on that information?
Yeah, I can quickly talk about it. I don't have the presentation open right now, so I don't know which slide you, but I did ask the question whether players would like this to be its own belt path, or whether they would like it to fall under Sword Knight. The majority answer that we found is that many players wanted it to be a fifth path not tied into Sword Knight. Since we were going with kind of a consensus-based proposal, that is why we voted that way.
Yes, we definitely want the data behind it, and even though we all have big opinions, we can yell and scream all we want. The populace gets to stay. Was there a follow-up question on why?
The slide is 13. Sorry about that.
Slide 13. Okay, cool. Follow along, guys. Was there a follow-up question on why people would want it as a fifth belt versus a sword belt?
But I don't believe there was specifically a follow-up question on why, but we did have comment boxes.
Okay.
This, you also know this quite a bit. I think my impression was many people saw Sword Knight as being not a good fit for battle game play, and they felt that the different ways of engaging with Amp Code and were not similar enough to fall under the same path. Magnus, you should jump in here.
Yeah,
I know
absolutely.
you
I
spent
can
a while
jump
looking
in.
at this too.
So yes, in the comments area, the large thing that seemed to be the deciding factor between going under a fifth belt or going under Sword Knight was that people felt that battle gaming is class prowess and Sword Knight is martial prowess, and there should be a distinction in between the two. That was from the data that we acquired. Either way you look at it, it is it is a relatively close margin as well.
Okay.
It's 46% versus 46.7% versus a 40.7%, and then there's that 12% with no opinion. So it is a closer margin. But since fifth belt did have the majority, we did go with the fifth belt path for this proposal.
So that's it. That's an interesting opinion. Separating the tournament style martial ability versus the battle game and tactical side as a different entity. That almost feels like a Rose Crown split, because like Crown is just service with a different name.
So the best suggestion I can say about this is that the meeting for this is coming up July 31st, and we try to get kingdoms as involved as they possibly could. But if you feel that your kingdom might be more leaning toward one of the paths, make sure that your voice gets heard. Make sure you go there and speak to the monarchs, because many of our rules throughout the history of Amtgard, the original writing usually isn't the first thing that makes it into a rule book, regardless.
No.
There's addendums and amendments that go through. People have had like 4-hour discussions to change certain parts and verbiage of the rules to make it fit to what the kingdoms as a whole see as fitting in well with this.
Okay.
So that would be the best advice I'd really have for that.
So you heard. Go talk to your rep.
And your monarch.
And your monarch. So
Absolutely.
yeah, if you have a senator, go talk to your senator. If you have a monarch, I hope you have a monarch. Go talk to your monarch. If you're a freehold, I don't know. Talk to AI, I guess. Somebody's opinion. Okay.
Closest kingdom to you?
Yep. Which is that's a different topic I have a point on. But okay, so with the proposal stating it's a fifth belt, because the majority of the populace wants it to be a fifth belt, how will this affect the way we look at sword as well? Is this going to change? If it's a completely separate belt, is this going to change the way sword is viewed? Do you guys think?
I don't think so. I don't see why it would. It's two sides of a similar coin. Like a sword knight may, if they dive deep, and I would say that the stereotype is that the sword knights and warlords don't tend to care very much about the battle games. I know plenty of these guys who don't know the rules to V8 or haven't bothered to read the V8 rulebook, which is hilarious. But generally, it's not like they haven't earned enough martial prowess to then go be very good in these games if they take the time to sit down and learn the classes. I'd like to think that at a certain point I went, people don't care about the same thing I care about anymore when it comes to fighting, like ditching and sparring and stuff. So I better just dive into the battle games if I want to have fun at Amp Guard. And that's become something that I really enjoy. And I think it'll show that those guys will still do well there. And vice versa, probably the people that end up getting really good at class games have the same opportunities to become very good at the martial prowess, because if they really shine on the battlefield, they're probably still, killing people, unless they only ever play casters that never use a sword, in which case that's a different problem. But
I mean, by these rules, they could still qualify for it.
They could still qualify. Well, for Sword Knight or for the other knight?
No, for the other knight.
That's fine. And not every Sword Knight and Warlord is equal.
Yep.
So, I just don't think it'll hurt it very much, personally. I guess it's my long-winded answer. Probably
makes
not.
sense. If we separate it with a 5th belt, there will definitely be a harder division between the two identities of Sword Knight and Battle Knight, and potentially stop some of the toxicity from bleeding over, because I think pretty unanimously Serpent and Sword are the two most toxic belt lines, like they're belt paths. They're hyper competitive, they're very individually based, beating other people in some fashion.
Serpent ended up that way, and it's not at all written that way.
No.
There's no reason for Serpent to be like that.
I think it depends on where you're at, because I think there's only,
it's just not
at
the
least
rules
from
of play.
I think anecdotally, I think there's only a few kingdoms that are that way, that are that competitive with A&S, to the point of being toxic. But for overall, I don't think it's that bad. I could be completely wrong. I haven't been in multiple different kingdoms, just purely based off what I've experienced and heard.
Mm-hmm.
But to get back to the question at hand, I would much prefer it under sword, because I want another path to sword. And I like the idea of just a general blanket battlefield prowess or tactician, not tied to classes, as the alternative pathway, because that does involve some martial prowess. That does involve understanding how the combat goes in our game, etc. But if people want it to be a 5th belt, people have spoken.
So that kind of brings up an interesting point. And this kind of falls under the weird little area of like double awards. The way the Order of Battle is written, and the way the first 5 orders of the warrior are written, is you can get both of them through battlefield prowess, just straight up being a badass on the field.
Yep.
And
that's, I was gonna say, that's why I like the tactician approach more, and I've pushed and spoken out for that. I mean, because
it's kind of built in, but it's looser.
I would like to make a comment very quick on the first 5 orders. It is specifically for showing skills within class battle gaming as well. So you could have a militia game and get battlefield prowess and still have that go toward warrior, where it would not qualify for this route as well. But should it? That is completely dependent on what you'd see, if it's martial prowess versus class prowess. If there's a martial battlefield going on, you're not showing class prowess. You're not showing class battle gaming prowess.
This is what I'm getting at. This is what I think. I don't think it should be tied to class battle games. I think it should just be battle games in general.
Yes, this is a class battle gaming knighthood, though. This is actually what we were told to create, was a class battle gaming knighthood. So that's what the focus is. That's why you're going to see class battle gaming on this.
I mean, Gus, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. And looking into the orders 1 through 10, leadership for leading units actually comes in at the 3rd order. That is when you see leading a small unit effectively during a battle game or class battlefield prowess. And that's recommended at a Shire level or higher. So even at Shire level, you can already be an effective leader in class battle gaming and being that tactician style person that you're talking about, Gus, and you can get awarded for that starting at your third. I mean, if you're already showing that and you don't have any, there's no reason why the monarch of that area cannot award you a first or a second for showing that leadership capability. So leadership is actually baked into this award, starting from the very roots of it.
That's good. All right, Jamie, you had your hand up first because this is now
So
sorry.
okay, now let's pretend that I'm not a nice guy, and
You from like 8 years ago.
let's say that a person is like, hey, I need you to go and fight that guy, and I go, why the fuck should I listen to you? My point that I want to get at is that there's no reason a single soul, when we're at this volunteer thing that I do on the weekends and sometimes not on the weekends and sometimes every day of my life, that I need to listen to some random person that is a stranger that I don't know, that I don't care about, and their fun is not my responsibility, and who cares? And what if a mass majority of people now that all want this new belt decide that they all want to tell everybody what to do, and nobody does anything that anyone wants, and that you should listen to me, and now it's a shouting contest because no, that guy's an idiot. I'm really smart. I know everything about whatever because I read some book about the 12th century times, and it says that pikes are the best weapon, and we should hit each other with pole arms, or whatever the case may be. It's a weird example, but my point is that it could so quickly devolve into a shouting match about I know better than you know, and you should listen to me. And some kid, and I feel bad for them, who really wants to strive for this thing and is really working this path, gets outshined by somebody who already has status in the position or is growing in status, because I would be much more likely to listen to somebody like, let's say, Michael, who is fantastic. Now, he is fantastic at it, and he's probably right because he's really, really good at the things that he does, and he's very tactically sound. I would listen to him, and I wouldn't listen to the kid. I would ignore him, probably. Again, assuming this wasn't the nice. Maybe I would humor the kid and I would go do the thing. But anyways, that just seems like an interesting concern that I would think may come from this thing. I don't know that it's guaranteed. I'm just hypothesizing. That's it.
So Annette did have her hand up before
Yeah,
me, but can I make
yes.
a quick comment because it's not an actual discussion? But what Jamie is describing, unfortunately, I have done, and I'm really regretting it right now because there have been times in games where kids have spoke, newer players said, "Well, you should do this," and I'm in that competitive mood and I want to win, and I, just say, "Oh, I convinced the other team that no, that's probably not the best idea. We should go with this." And now I feel like a dick. Thanks, Jamie.
Well, and it's not even a shot at you because I know for a fact that I've gone, I'm gonna go just do what I want to do. Like here later, I'm gonna go flank that guy, or whatever the case is. It's not even being mean. It's just we're all individuals who have our own thoughts and feelings and want to do our own things. And in the competitive aspect, it's funny that you became an example here. That is not what my intention was, so that's extra funny.
I'm pretty sure all of us in this chat could become examples of that. Like straight up, we've done it at some point. I've been like, that's not a great idea.
Hey, Merrick, Annette did have her hand up. I didn't.
Yes,
I just want to make that
you
quick
had
comment.
You had up and down and up and down. So you've got a comment. Discussions, go.
Sorry about that. I was just trying to find a good point to jump.
You were totally good.
So it's mentioned earlier that you can get. Thank you. It was mentioned you can get 5th Order of the Vireo for Battlefield Prowess. That is currently not actually in the rulebook. I just wanted to make that note. It's up to levels for field prowess. So we do have another set of proposals this year that would, among other things, raise that up to 5th. Not to go too far down that sidetrack, but just letting you guys know that currently in the rulebook does cap out at level 4.
Right. So, and that is a whole other discussion. The whole shifting. I mean, it's kind of tied to this. The shifting of requirements of Sword Knight from our standard, which has continually been getting higher because we keep asking, hey, you got to beat the last warlord, and then the last warlord, and the warlord after that, and the warlord after that, and blah, blah. We've been building a ladder. Are we going to see that same problem with this belt? Are we
absolutely
setting ourselves up for that problem of like, hey, to be a Paragon, you got to go beat Merrick, but in order for the next guy, you've got to go beat so and so, and then the next guy, and the next, like, we start asking people to be better than the people before them, and
And-
sometimes it's not fair.
And now you've got newbies who
I
love
can-
the
I
idea
mean,
of
I can-
Paragon and are no longer excited about it.
Right, and that you would have saying.
I can confirm that we did think about. Yeah, I think I might be on a bit of a lag. Sorry, my internet's being viewed. But I can confirm that we did think about what you brought up as how do we make this something distinct from just Sword Knight 2.0. There's no point in just writing a second ladder that will only include the same people, right? So, yes, our hope is that by taking the feedback from all of the respondents who definitely wanted to see a path to knighthood but did not want to see any rigid requirements tied to it, hoping that that will mitigate against that by allowing kingdoms to say, yes, we believe this player is who we want to see. They should have the freedom to do that. But I see Magnus also has a point to make, so I'll pass it to him.
Yeah, Teflon was before me though.
Alright.
Well, I wanted to actually speak a little bit to what Gus said a while ago. About like no, you're good. The prowess and everything like that. So I've always been for keeping it under sword, because I actually like the way Serpent and Flame have multiple paths to the same belt. And for me personally, I like that because everything kind of that is semi-related gets tucked into one belt, and I think that's really good for people who are like achievement oriented, in my opinion anyway. And it's possible that even just in this discussion that we need to look at a truly class section, a battlefield prowess tactician section, and then the tournament night section. And that's 3 different avenues going straight to sword that we've already discussed about here potentially. So I don't know if that's like another step that we may need to look at as well.
I don't hate it.
Right. So, if we're looking at now, we're stepping back to a real big topic.
Yeah, no, I think that's just the problem with like trying to discuss a new belt aspect about things too.
Yeah, we have to kind of cover what knighthood truly is, and if there is a standard for like, it's really weird and frustrating and interesting when you look at what people have been awarded for X. So like, a person runs an event, it goes well, they come in under budget, they're fine, they get their next order. Great. Next person comes along at the same order, they run an event, it comes in slightly over budget, not everybody was as happy, but it wasn't bad enough that everyone wanted them to not get the next award, they still get the next award. What is the standardization saying there? Is this enough for 7 or 8 or 9, or do we have to maintain a certain standard? And because our monarchy changes every 6 months, we don't have a real hard standard. It's still assisted within the award standardization because it gives us a guideline of like, hey, especially for warrior, but for everything else, it's kind of just like, kind of just gotta up the next thing or do something similar. And then we have these really interesting changes between kingdoms. Like, for the Rising Winds for a long time, you had to be part of Keep on the Borderlands to get your Master Rose. You just didn't get your Flame Knight without being part of Keep on the Borderlands crack team. Like, it just didn't happen. That's a really huge standard and a very limiting standard. We want to make sure we're not running into that same problem down the road, potentially, either with any of the night paths. So if we're looking at a standardization as a whole and how we progress from nothing to night, does the current proposal balance out with its closest member, which would be the sword? And how does it balance out with other things that are less defined, like flame? Anybody can jump in on that weird topic question I just kind of asked. Did that make sense, or I just babbled for 5 minutes?
Yes.
I could say something to
Go,
that.
go for it.
So the difficult part with making this proposal for a knighthood, and I think it's a proposal with almost any knighthood that you look at in our game, is we have 22 kingdoms, and a lot of these kingdoms all have very unique and different cultures, and you did touch on it quite a bit. There's some kingdoms where to get a crown knight, you need to wear the big hat, you must have monarch. And there's other kingdoms where you can get through by being regent, champion, PM, and work your way in your crown points up like that and never really hold the office as well. There are some other kingdoms where to get a serpent knighthood, you must win a dragon master, where there are others where it's like that person just made a single very excellent, like 4.8 to 5.0 scored piece of art, fantastic work at it, and they earn their 10th through that. There's others that will require you to go a little bit more outside of your comfort zone and say, hey, we know that this person's really great at doing oil paintings, but we want to see them do something different, maybe even like change up the medium to charcoal. And that's all based on kingdom's culture. And it's very hard to try to make something that will fit every that will be the exact cultural fit for a kingdom. So with this proposal, our goal is to give a set of recommendations to the kingdoms to have at their disposal to truly decide how they want to give this order. If there is a kingdom that does not really value paragons or does not want to see paragons as part of this path, then they don't have to include it. It's a recommendation. If there's another that doesn't really value and don't want to see people being the battlefield commanders, and they do have more of a value toward a paragon path, then it's all in their right to say, hey, we don't really value the more tactic route here. I'd like to see a kingdom that incorporates all four of them, but since these are all recommendations, that's what this is trying to do. And I think that's a difficulty that we experience with every belt path in our game currently. Even a little bit with sword, because there are some sword is the most well defined. I would say sword does have the least problem with this, but there's even some sword tournaments where you go to a kingdom level tournament and no warlords show up or no sword knights show up and you win it. Well, was it a high enough level of difficulty? Did you get your 10th?
That's not your fault as the individual who shows up.
Oh,
That shouldn't be held
absolutely.
against anybody who doesn't show
Yep.
up.
Yeah.
Or sorry,
And
that shouldn't be held against anybody who doesn't. That's
and that's a thing that will happen with some kingdoms though, is that they'll be like, let's say Lily is at his 9th, and you go to a kingdom tournament. There's no other warlords there. There's still like 22 people at the event, and you smoke every single one of them. You sweep entire categories, and you win. But there wasn't a good showing of warlords. The next highest person maybe had a 7th order of the warrior, and then they don't give you a 10th. That is something that I have heard of happening in other kingdoms already. But I'm just
culturally, I
saying
would
that as
like
an
to think that we
example.
have people that should be able to recommend you regardless.
Yes.
Like if I've been pushing this long and I've been, at least when it comes to sword, and I've been fighting and I'm involved, and generally that means you're involved in the fighting culture across a national level. Generally, at this point, is we just people love to play and travel everywhere. That my peers or my betters at 10th and higher or whatever
Yeah.
is that they'd be able to say, yeah, like this guy is there, this should qualify. It doesn't matter that we didn't show up. So I would almost look at it like a passing of the torch and them deciding, well, let's say one of these guys is nationally in the top, 3 in this game. Well, is it my fault that I'm not in the top 3 of this game and I couldn't catch that guy? That's not the standard that we're setting for Warlord across, or we shouldn't be setting across.
Yeah, we
That shouldn't be what it is. And some kingdoms have this issue. And some
Yeah.
people are held back on their awards because, well, they're like, well, but they haven't beaten Peter the Quick. Well, Peter the Quick has generally has been argued, and a multitude of very, very good fighters that he's in the top 10, some people's top 5, whatever in the game. So is that fair to say that, well, you didn't beat Peter, so you're not good enough? I think the question
I literally had to deal with this exact same thing on my warlord path because I had to go through Eggman. Eggman was top 3 in the game rated. And what I ended up doing is going through other warlords.
Sure. And that should be fine.
Out.
And for these kingdoms that don't have warlords, I mean, come on, this is the sword knight problem that needs to be fixed. As far as I see it, there's kingdoms that don't have many warlords or many fighting warlords, or they don't have necessarily any warlords at all. I suppose I haven't done the math on that. I haven't seen, or maybe they're not tournamentally active. Whatever.
1 or 2 kingdoms.
The next guy or next gal or whomever, whatever, that just in generalized term here, that wins this tournament and beats the people that are around them and they are the top of their peers should be awarded their next award, like regardless of whatever the level is. And if they become the next warlord, great, they're the new bar. And then the next person will beat them and they're the new bar, and so on and so forth. And then eventually it turns into, if this person becomes a master, is in the top 5 or whatever, well, you have a pile of people that are different bars at different levels of what would be acceptable for your area and your kingdom. It's not a national award, it's your local kingdom award. It should be for that group, and you need these people. It's fine that a warlord in a new kingdom isn't as good as a warlord in a kingdom somewhere else across the country that's been established for 30 years and they've had people with plenty of time to work. Like, that problem should be fixed already. Like, it is a weird issue. It's not that complicated an issue in my mind. It should be pretty easy to take care of, but we all play kind of a different game in different kingdoms. We're all playing the same game, but it's not really the same game depending.
I mean, stop shaming other kingdoms for making warlords. I muted myself. Stop shaming other kingdoms for handing out awards just because they don't meet the standard of your kingdom.
Oh yeah,
well,
100%.
And it may not even be your kingdom's standard. It may just be
or standard of another kingdom.
It might be certain individuals who have what they believe is their own personal standard, and it's hard to not get sucked into that. We all have a little bias. We all like to look and be like, "Oh, well, I don't know if that guy's that good," or maybe like, "Man, that person's incredibly good," but maybe you disagree, and you're like, "Oh, I don't know," because if you have to ask somebody their top 10 in all of Amtgard, and it's similar but always a little different, because we all have different perspectives on what we think is good or bad. That's fine. Like, that's okay. But you're right. We shouldn't say that. Like, if I think Anatole is the best fighter in Amtgard right now, that it's a standard that we should be holding over in some other kingdom. Let's say Polaris, since you guys are here. Like that. But that has nothing to do with you guys. That has nothing to do with you. So that's whatever. Good for Anatole. He's awesome guy. He's a great guy. Right. I love the guy.
So I think part of that comes from the way that Warlord was originally written. Like, old school, it was hard. Getting Warlord was your streak. That was it.
Get your 21.
Yeah, get your 21.
Still hard, thank you.
That mentality of like Warlord is for the best of the best, I think kind of stuck around in people's heads and culturally came in to Warlord when we transitioned it to be just win these tournaments. I'm hoping that because the Horde of the Battle and the Battle Knight are not associated with that kind of high-end, you got to be the best of the best of the best, we're going to see less of that initial problem of, well, you've got to beat this person, or you've got to be better than this person, or whatever. I think the problem that we're going to see the most, and we talked about it, is the higher order tacticians and strategists are going to outvoice the lower level ones, and we're going to have to push to make sure that there's a culture of, hey, when you get your top, stop running everything. Like, it's kind of almost the same thing as rogues. If you're a master rose, we almost expect you to stop running all the events and just help people run events. And it's a little weird trade-off. I don't remember who said it. They were talking about getting their belt, and their serpent belt specifically, but up until getting their masterhood, everyone was asking, what's your next project? What are you doing next? What are you doing next? As soon as that white belt hit, they were asked, who are you helping? And it was a completely different transition from what are you individually doing to how are you affecting our game as a whole. And I think we're going to have to be more aware of this, because it's a large group thing that we're going to be affecting, and especially the 8, 9, 10 are all about moving 25, 35, 40 people on a battlefield. That's a lot of people to take on a battlefield to move. I mean, keep on the Borderlands, I think our biggest battle games are like 200 v 200. That's a half your fort, like 2 to a third to a half your force.
It's unrealistic. It's not actually going to happen.
Where did you get the number of 40, just out of curiosity?
I might just be spreading.
Okay.
I've gone through so many different things today. Okay.
No, we don't.
Did you take the numbers
We
out?
didn't. I don't we put a number.
Teflon has had his hand up for a while, by the way.
Yes.
Merrick.
Stefan, talk. While I figure this.
It looks like it was the large team thing is 25 on the upper end, just as a note to what we were talking about here.
Gotcha.
The other thing is asking people to step away, I think, is also an unfair thing. Like, you're not going to realistically ask a warlord to stop competing in tournaments or something like that as
Right.
well. So you can't really dictate what fun I have to some degree, and that's the same for a flame belt who like loves doing feast or autocrating or something like that. Like, this is where culturally we have some issues with how we judge these upper echelon awards with people coming into the game versus the veterans, right?
Yes. And I think everybody on the crown, sword, crown, sword, and flame path really understand that the serpent. Well, I guess the serpent also as well, but like in the ones that there's a limited number of things you can actually get it for, like flame is most handed out for running an event. Crown is handed out for being in office. Those are limited amounts per year. There is only 2 times a year a monarch is chosen. There's only so many events planned in a reign. There's only so much time to do X things. And battle gaming, I think, has a less of a problem with it, especially because the availability for duchy level parks to have that higher level award system, and we're not just relying on kingdom battle games. But I think we're going to see some of the similar problem of the people that do start getting those 8, 9, 10s are going to, I don't want to say they have to step away, but in order to let other people come through, we're going to have to talk and create a culture about letting people have the opportunity to express and not just shutting everyone else down. I mean, if you have a flame knight that's really good at running feast, do you always give it to them, or do you give it to the kid that's
Yes,
got 5?
I don't want food poisoning.
Yeah.
Raw chicken sucks, bro. Like,
Okay. We'll go off feet. How about gate? You have like
gate?
Mama Jet has run gate at Keep several years. She's a bang up job. Do you give it to Mama Jet every single time, or do you give it to
It depends. Am I the autocrat?
Yes.
I want my event to work so I can get my awards. If I'm doing it for an award level thing, I want the best award, the best people working the best positions. I'm not really interested in giving it to the 5th level guy who doesn't know what they're doing and then thousands of dollars get lost.
And has never proved themselves.
Like,
Okay.
now that I would put that person in the position, and hopefully they would then
To learn.
pull people in to teach them.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
And then as they've proven themselves, here's that seal of approval. I mean, there's always a process you have to go through to do any of these things. I don't just get to do Keep on the Borderlands because why not? Like it just doesn't really work that way. You gotta this is why we have these awards and we have these stepping stones. I wouldn't put the fifth level guy in the position of the highest level thing that we're doing, and
Right.
hope that especially if I am also trying to get my own awards. But that's not really here or there. This is about this Battle Knight thing. I really don't like the name. It's hard. I don't know why I don't like it. It's just it's interesting. I can't quite
It
figure
was
it
the
out.
one voted on the most.
Well,
I'll leave my
runners
comment
up.
at that.
I wish it was Squirrel Knight or something. I would love it. Knight of the Squirrel. It would be fantastic. I would vote for that a million times over. It'd make me smile. I'd laugh every single time. But really, no. Merrick, I get what you're trying to say. You're a good person with a good heart, and I think you think on a positive sense that people will do this the right thing.
Yeah, I'm
People
not.
are kind of terrible, dude. Like people want to get their awards. They want to succeed. They want to be the hero, and it's so hard
then,
to.
Yeah, building off of what Sunshine was just talking about and Merrick, that's also going to apply to Paragons. You only have so many events to award Paragons. It's an echelon award. Now you've got an echelon award that requires earning 3 echelon awards? Because you can talk about all that first little bracket. That is, I guarantee you, culturally, it's not going to be relevant. They're going to look at the easiest way of judging someone, which is going to be the Paragon. Which is why I've always been adamant against it. But now you've got this thing of, we require not just 1, but 3 echelon awards. to get this other echelon award. It's the Warlord problem. Oh, you have to beat so and so, but not once. You have to beat him 4 times. That's wrong, in my opinion.
Okay, so I saw
done.
Magnus's hand up first.
And Net can go first, but I'm gonna share spicy takes after this, I think. So
All right, so
So
like
again, it's not. So again, it's not a requirement. It's a recommendation, and kingdoms are free to come up with something that's not on our recommended list and just be like, hey, you are so great at battle games that even if you don't really check any of these recommended boxes, we're still giving you this ability. And they can do that because we wrote it as recommendations. I'm not trying to argue with you here. I'm just trying to point out that it's not a requirement. We are not requiring 3 Paragons. Somebody could get this with 0 Paragons or 1 Paragon. Sorry, Magnus, what were you going to say?
no, I think Augustus has a rebuttal, and I want to wait to see what
Yeah.
this one is.
I do
So-
as well.
That the same thing is about Warlord.
Gus, my
And
apologies.
look at the culture.
it is true.
There's this recommended, and no one steps outside the recommendation to the point where it's become so toxic that so many people have issues
It's not
with it.
recommended.
The recommendation
I'm sorry,
that's in
I don't
there,
mean to cut you off.
yeah,
It is-
it's. But that's the thing is,
not-
people are going to look.
It's a
at this-
requirement.
Yeah, but people are going to look at your requirement for that award, and they're going to see this long, the long that you described, or Paragon. Culturally, people are going to shift to the easiest to justify, which is going to be the Paragon. Yes, we may see some given out for that, but culturally, that's what's going to probably happen.
Well, especially at the start. The start,
Yeah.
it'll be a little wild, a little wild west at first as we settle into what it's going to be, and in 5 years, maybe less, as these awards get given out, we'll fall into whatever is cultural and what isn't looked at as. I can just give somebody a warlord if I'm king. I can just do
Yep.
it. I can just be like, "You're a warlord. Congratulations! It's
Well-
time to be a sword knight." And I have that power already. But culturally,
But we
it
don't
would be
use it.
suicide. It would be suicide for my Amp Guard career. I mean, okay, maybe that's insensitive. It would be very, very rough for me to advance in other aspects of this game because there are little blacklists of people that have done crazy shit that don't generally continue to grow in the game anymore. Right? Like it's not cool and it's negative and it's the toxic part of the inner workings of what we do, but oh gosh, it will just get so wild when you. I agree with Gus mostly. It's going to come down to like list of things they could have done this. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't go Paragon. Maybe Paragon is looked down as like that. No, Paragon is fucking terrible. All these Paragons suck. But they're doing this thing. This other list of stuff. That's what we're looking for. We don't look for Paragons.
You never know.
Or whatever it is. It could shift. Culturally, I think what will happen, or at least our concern is what will happen, is that we will fall somewhere, and that's what it'll be, and it has the chance to become very toxic, and that's what we're trying to avoid now. Is trying to have a more positive and open
Yes.
cultural idea.
Okay,
of
Magnus, you had
acceptance.
your hand up.
Yeah, so I think this is a good time to address concerns. If all of you have your slideshows open, I'll just say like a teacher here, please go to slide 11.
What slideshow?
So if you look in the Discord channel, ours is a classroom. If you go to the
YouTube, I will try to link
classroom
these all in the
channel,
chat, by the way.
there's a classroom under ANS called the classroom. It's a text-based one.
If you want to follow along with that, otherwise I
Is
think
there
everyone should
no
get it.
supporting data one? Yes, it's called Night of Battle Supporting Information Final.
Yes.
Okay, hold on. Where the heck do I find?
So Merrick, while people are finding
doing
what they're
that.
finding here, I am getting messages from the Peanut Gallery that they have things that they want to chime in on, and the video is running kind of long, and they want to be able to also be heard. So since I'm getting messages now, I figured I would let you know that I'm getting messages that people have comments and they want to be heard on.
Oh
this.
yeah, I can. While people are opening up the slideshows, let's swap
alright,
over to
If
that.
that's what you
just
want
so
to
we
do,
know.
however you want to do this
No,
format.
this is a good point for that because we're at an hour and a half for this. So, if you have a comment, I don't know how to moderate this efficiently. I guess
Wild
just-
West, buddy.
Yeah.
You're the one in charge of this. You get to make the rules. So
All
however you
right,
want.
so let's do it this way. This is the simplest way I can think to do it because unfortunately Discord does not have a hand raised system like Zoom does, but I'm not paying for Zoom. If you have a comment you'd like to make, please just comment your name in the comments, and then I will call on you. We'll discuss, and then keep moving on. I think that's the best way to do it. But yeah, so if you have a comment, please comment, and then we'll get to discussing it. And you guys should be able to unmute yourself. I don't think it's set up currently that you guys are perma muted. I know you can't show video because I had that set up correctly, but the slide shows the data, the information, all this stuff is like what we need for AmpGuard in the future, because AmpGuard from the beginning has all been kind of just opinion based up until we actually started collecting data and using it. And
Thanks, Annette.
yeah, actually taking all of the background data in the org that Megiddo just didn't want to put in the front line.
The chat says they can't see a comment section.
It should be hashtag the classroom. It'll be above. It's weird. It's laid out a little weird. So
I can just call on this person.
sure, go for that. Is it Dizzy?
It is Dizzy. Hey Dizzy. Hey yo Dizzy.
Dizzy, you're unmuted, so you should be able to talk.
I'll message him. You are.
I think he's trying to, but it's not
muted.
coming through.
Dog. His mic, his actual physical mic might be muted because I
Can you hear me?
Oh, there he
Yep,
is.
there we go.
Ah,
All right, thanks. Yeah, man, there's just like so much to unpack that you guys have went over. Yes, the award recommendation for the 5th belt path is just that, right? It's a suggestion. As many people have pointed out, suggestions go right out the window and we figure out what is the requirement and we build off of that. Same thing with Sword Knight Warlord right now. As Death Lily mentioned early on, anybody, any monarch can get in the seat and be like, hey, person A, brand new day, you are now a warlord. Congratulations. You're Sword Knight next. Done. Now, you don't have to necessarily get knighted in that order. Some kingdoms make it so you can't get knighted unless your circle approves it. My kingdom, which I'm currently the monarch of, I could literally go out to every member of my populace and give every one of them any belt that I wanted to right now.
so much fun. The power.
I could use a crown belt. That sounds good. Thanks, bud.
Yeah,
You're
right?
qualified for that already. Stop it.
I'm not. I got boned. I'm at like 8.
Oh,
I should have been at 7 or qualified, and I got put at 8.
Yeah. And so that's kind of to your point too, right? Because crowns came along. Crowns were something that were, hey, convert this and do as best as you can to convert it to give people stuff. So with Death Lily, the way he should have been converted and qualified for crown right away. There were several people in our kingdom that didn't get that. There were several people in other kingdoms that didn't get it. The problem with suggestions, it always comes down to who's in power and who is perceived to be in power. One of the things that was brought up earlier was about ditching and how that kind of took a back burner and we went to one-on-ones. I distinctly remember living through that phase in time in Texas where it went from, hey, we're going to ditch until 3, 4 in the morning, drink some beers, get up and ditch again all day long. And, we're going to battle game when we battle game, whatever, we're going to ditch to, oh, well, I'm going to fight you on the corner one-on-one, and then it devolved into one-on-ones and then tournaments, right?
Mhm.
And that's how the culture decline went. So you had hostility, but you had people that dealt with the toxicity of, hey, are you better than me or not better than me on the ditch field? That's where we sorted it out, right? And then it went to tournaments. Okay, there's a couple of kingdoms right now I know where one kingdom, they're not making new sword knights at all because the reigning sword knights don't show up or the warlords don't show up. The other kingdom, they had people that were winning tournaments, but because their warlords were purposely setting out to make this next person not be able to get it, was putting a blocker. So it makes me wonder, and I would love to see the name, by the way, changed to Knight of the Fray, because that means battle. That'd be so much cooler. Whatever.
I love it.
So many things. So many things.
I love it.
Monarchs. You have
Talk to
opinions,
your
tell
monarchs.
tell your
Yes.
Tell your senators, tell your monarchs,
Busy.
talk to people.
Knight of the Fray.
That is so
So,
That's a great name.
So much
thanks.
better.
Um,
Order
so-
of the Fray.
Yeah, Order of the Fray,
Yeah.
Knight of the Fray. Just go through it, right? It's already with battle. And the last topic, and I'll jump right off of this, is if we wanted to give alternate paths back to Sword, we could start with Prowess and we could start with Griffin. Because if you have Masterhood Honor, if in the history of Amtgard, all the way back to the very beginning, I believe the number of Griffin Knights is 4 total. Beginning to end, 4. Prowess, I think we're at 6 total. That number may be high by 2. And getting those additional people, alternate paths, I think would do very much for inclusivity. But I am not against this 5th order. I just think it's going to become very toxic within the first reign and just devolve from there.
Okay, so Annette, you also did data, and I think this is the topic you're about to talk on. You did a bunch of research on Warrior, and holy crap! Please do more data research. I really like that's the best part of the Gathering of the Crowns entire meeting was the data. Your proposal for Warrior moves towards a lot less toxicity and allows for more individuality between kingdoms. You want to talk on that a little bit? And the other opinion you had just now?
So just quickly to Dizzy's point. So thank you for that point about Griffins and about battlefield prowess. And I think Charlie might have also been about to make the same point that we did have survey questions relating to. Yeah, we asked a survey question, what would you like to see happen to Griffin? The responses were divided between new path, sword path, and don't change it. And the largest slice of the pie was don't change it.
It was a
So-
majority even. Like it
So
had
they- It wasn't overwhelming, but we did ask. And
Yeah.
since there wasn't big support for putting in Griffin, we didn't write a proposal. But what I really wanted to say is you have until June 30th to get your monarch to bring a proposal. So if you're passionate about something that we didn't write, you can absolutely sit down, write it up, get the group together, get a monarch to bring what you want to see to GOTC this year. Just because we didn't do it doesn't mean nobody can do it.
True.
Yep. Bring it to Crowns.
Quickly about values. Yes. Quickly about values. We do have some proposals on those. I would say they are nearly small changes for the most part. They still require, it would still be a tournament-based ladder. Battlefield prowess would only go from capping at 4 to capping at 5, so we do not see support for extending field prowess all the way up to a masterhood. On the other hand, we didn't ask about do you want an entirely new path, we just asked for the existing ladder. I know this isn't about Elders of Familiar, but I would say we have some fairly small-scale changes to that ladder, in my perception.
It's you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. It's allowing kingdoms to identify what a kingdom tournament is, which is a huge factor. It's like a small change, but it means a lot. Moving the kingdom win requirement up 1, and then moving the battlefield prowess up 1. I believe that's the entire proposal, basically. Correct?
Yeah, that's pretty close. Yes, we have some alternate options on kingdom wins. So we have an option to move it up 1, and then if that passes, we also have an option where they can consider moving it up to. In no case would we be cutting out the tournaments entirely. There would still be a minimum of 2 wins required.
Mm-hmm. Instead of the
and there's
4 wins
battlefield prowess, and then there's. Yes.
I think. Sorry, are you done? I don't want to cut you off because I know you have a little. Okay, Max, you raising your hand?
Yeah, so I wanted to go over the concerns that have been brought up kind of during this conversation. So one of the concerns that I'm hearing a lot is toxicity, or the worry that the game will become more toxic. So on that presentation, if we go to slide 11, you can look at all the player concerns. Out of all of the concerns that we have, difficult to judge who would be earning of it. Had more people that would agree with that. But if we look at something like how fun a battle game would be for a casual player, or teamwork being devalued, or knighthood being too easy to obtain, or fifth knighthood will be too difficult to obtain, all of these are scoring very much into the disagree to strongly disagree category. Now, I'm not saying that your opinions of thinking it will be toxic is wrong. I'm just saying that that does fall into the minority opinions of what we have gotten from our surveys and all our respondees. To go on with this as well, this is me speaking. I'm going to put on my knight hat now, take off my award standardization hat. As a knight, if you're looking for somebody for knighthood, you can't be that toxic asshole and beat your way to the top and then have everybody like you and give you that belt. The reason for that is you need to show your knightly qualities to be a knight. You need to be that pillar of knowledge. You need to be that approachable person that a new person would want to go to. And if you if you carve your path, your potential path to knighthood by stepping on the skulls of your enemies every time, and in a very toxic way, I should say, of being that brutish, uncommunicative, very argumentative and abrasive personality, I should say, you're not going to have what qualities I think a circle of knights would be looking for. So you're almost damning yourself if you try to go about it that way. And we as a culture of Amtgard altogether in our individual kingdoms need to do our very best, even today, to make sure that toxicity in the game does not happen. So that's kind of my feelings on the first one, as a knight, and then also as somebody on the committee, that we have data that shows that people do not believe that this would be an issue. I do have more, but I do want to have I'll be hitting the other concerns. I don't want to go on a huge 8-minute rant.
Teflon, you
I saw that Teflon raised his hand.
Yeah, well, I think that the general consensus is, especially from the data from here, if you look at who we have on the call as 2 warlords who directly deal with the toxicity problem, is potentially the bias that we have with it. And it's a different perspective that is from a minority perspective, right? So I think
I agree with
that's
that.
a possibility that what we're seeing here as well.
So I've got a question for the warlords. Was it more toxic between 6 and 8, or between 8 and 10? Like, do you see more toxicity between people that are in those the higher ranges, or the like higher to mid?
Higher.
The higher ones?
So
The
go first. Mine's probably long.
I was gonna say that I would say it's the higher range, mostly because it was people saying, "Oh, you're at I'm at 9, 10, or whatever. Oh, you're not good enough yet. Go win some more. Go beat so and so. Or why haven't you beat Egg yet? Or why haven't you done this?" And then the response is, "Well, I beat Tato. I beat this person. I beat this person." But it's still that there's still that toxicity higher up. I never really had an issue when I was 6 to 8. It was like, okay, cool. He's up and coming. We'll keep his eye on him. That's about it.
Okay.
So I want to preface anything with every fighter's journey is always a little different, because I didn't have to fight Eggman. right? For example, that's not somebody that someone whose name I didn't have to fight Tato either. Those are just two names that came up from Gus that are, part of his journey.
Yep.
My journey involved uh, Dizzy, Diego, Draknar, Weasel, Margol, Thadagrin, and a pile of guys like this. And that, I guess technically Adam came to one of the tournaments. Atog came to one of the tournaments as well. But whatever. These are all dudes. That's like 10 warlords that I had to fight through. Some of them multitudes of tournaments. And it's a different journey. Where toxicity really came out in this, in my opinion, wasn't from. It basically had. So it probably started at 7 warriors. Okay.
Mhm.
And it wasn't necessarily from the people around me, because generally the expectation, and I had heard this expectation when I was still in Polaris, that like, oh man, well, you're gonna get it. You're so good at fighting. And it's hilarious because I was much less good at fighting then. But whatever. The point is that it was the expectations that now started to weigh on me as an individual, of the people around me expecting me to do this thing that's very challenging. And so then what that ends up turning into is the competition and the competitive nature of what this is starts to weigh on at least me, the individual. And the toxicity part came from myself. I was the toxic player by a large margin. I do not like tournament me very much at all. That guy wants to win. That guy doesn't really care about the new kid's feelings. That guy doesn't really give a shit about anyone's fucking feelings. Let's turn that on a little bit here.
Mm-hmm.
I am there to be the best. I am there to take every category. I will build a bridge of the bodies of my friends to get to that tournament, to win that tournament, as the man once said. Now, I don't like that. I did not like that me, but that was the constant struggle from 7 to 10. And I had to do it through a multitudes of dudes that are very good with high expectations, because a lot of them are my friends and they expect me to do and perform at a certain level. And heaven forbid I lose to somebody they don't think is good enough, because now it turns into this part of toxicity that I guess can come from them. But this isn't after the fact that I got there. This isn't on the journey. This is now after. This is after I got the belt. It's like, well, how did you lose to that guy? They're terrible, or something of that nature. Okay, that's not verbatim necessarily, but it becomes this like, well, shit, anybody can win, anyone can die, everybody bleeds. Like, so being competitive is an interesting monster when you take this very seriously and you care about this thing so very deeply. And I very much, and again, I said this would be kind of long, so I'm sorry in advance. I'm very passionate about this. I would encourage people to maybe never get better. Find a spot that you like and you're comfortable with and live there, because oh boy, is it fun when everybody's challenging, when every fight is epic, when every battle with your friends is always cool. They at least still want to play with you. Getting better is not always a good thing. So anyways, that's enough of me on my soapbox about what this is, but I would say that that's the difference, is that toxicity came more from myself as the individual, and that was really, really challenging to get past that.
Yeah, 7 really starts to kick it in. 8, you start figuring out, okay, well, are you beating people that are showing up at tournaments, things of that nature. 9, 10, and then like Death Lily says, there's a reason why there are not a lot of warlords or a lot of sword knights in different mindsets, and because you have to become somebody else when you're in those tournaments. You have to win. Like you don't care about anybody else's fun. You have 2 chances every reign to show that you are the guy to beat, or the girl to beat, or whoever it is. You are the person. And whenever you finally do get there, you think, oh, great, I have a ribbon. Well, now, great, you can't lose. If you lose, oh, well, well, why'd you lose this way? Why'd you lose that way? I myself, I hate tournaments. I'm not a tournament fighter. They bring out the absolute worst in every person I've ever met, ever. You could take a super nice guy, get him in a tournament, and they are just nasty people. Bitching is what I love, but Yeah, I mean, the toxicity never goes away when you get that white silver strap. It's there for life.
Okay, so Gus, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to. I was actually gonna. I actually agree with that and Dizzy about the tournament thing. But I also love tournaments. It's my jam. But I would actually be curious.
Sadist.
You talk about Oh no, the competitive gets me. But I'd actually be curious to hear from a serpent's perspective, and especially in these areas that you guys are describing that are a little more toxic, to see if their responses are similar to what we've just described, and then overlay that, and now you're creating another competitive way. There's going to be toxicity if the other competitive ways have toxicity. It's gonna happen. It's inevitable. It's how we manage it and how we set our standards.
Yes.
It's always worse for the fighters, man. Like we're
Yeah, I
the
mean-
people that are judged every time we do anything when it comes to fighting. And fighting is like one of the most popular things of the thing that we do, right? So if I have a bad fighting day, just goofing around or sparring, it turns into this, well, I got the better of Cat Bully. I am the greatest. And it's like I can't even go goof around anymore. I got to perform all the fucking time. It's exhausting. Very toxic.
So, I mean,
so we've got Annette, do you have a Paragon hood? I know you have a Lord title. Okay, so I want to compare that to the Paragon struggle because my experience was not toxic, but it was a lot of my own positivity coming through. Like, I was very competitive during certain battle games, and I just shut up during other battle games. What was all your guys' kind of feel on that? We'll start with Teflon on this one. The Warlords just described the real high level competitive toxicity. Did you experience any of that with Paragon Hood, Teflon?
At the time, and we're actually kind of working on driving the bar a little lower. We did basically require more or less a tactician aspect to it to get there. Being a constant threat on the kingdom field and everything. But it's really interesting because it's the opposite thing that happened with Warlords. The moment that you got the Paragon hood, most of us left to service right afterwards. So it was like, stamp, all right, you're done, get out of the way. Which has left kind of a problem in the sense of like, who's still good on the field kind of problem, right? So it's almost an opposite problem than the Warlords have experienced. So there's definitely like there's a lot of not quite there yet, but there was no real what you need to go further kind of aspect to it because it's not a quantifiable position. So I think that's what we're going to run into here. And this is why I actually like the final proposal pretty well, because all of these things are recommendations. Now, I don't disagree that, again, Paragon will be the thing that gets looked at quick as the quick and dirty. Here's the stamp, and this is probably what the culture diverges to. But I think that becomes something we have to look at our monarchy when electing them and things like that as well to think that might be like a point of contention when you're choosing your vote, you know.
So, okay, so Lily and Augustus have both gotten Paragon hoods and Warlords. You don't have a Paragon hood yet?
Nope.
Oh, that's BS.
No.
That's what?
I mean,
It's so easy though. You have a good stick skill. You just go fight the martial classes and win.
I've been working on it for a long time. Never got it so far.
All
Your
right.
buddy's got to recommend you more. That's
That's the thing.
that's very unusual.
Okay, so before we jump to, okay, so this gives us an interesting opportunity. Okay, so Magnus is, are you 7 warrior?
I'm 7 warrior, 2 paragons.
2 paragons, and you have a flame belt.
Yeah.
I know Polaris's flame belt is really not toxic. We have some weird background toxicity that's mostly like, hey, I critiqued that event, I didn't like it very much, but that's more of just keeping a standard than it is toxicity.
Y'all's standards pretty high based on like traveling and stuff.
That's true. We really like our events to be amazing. For your
No.
two Paragons, did you experience similar toxicity to what the Warlords
So
described?
I'm a Paragon Warrior and a Paragon Assassin. For Paragon Warrior, I would say 0 toxicity. I kind of fell into it just by having fun being a big dude in a suit of armor. Lily's the one that actually gave me my Paragon hood for Warrior. And it was mainly, I think the final thing I did was I led an armored column through at Keep on the Borderlands to help
we talked
seal
about
a
this the
seal a
other
W. Yeah.
Which
So,
I orchestrated by tacticians that I don't have.
so it was a good time. It was like, I mean, that one I fell into. I was like, oh yeah, I did it. Cool. Assassin was one. I started out playing Assassin for fun. Then I realized how amazingly fun Assassin is. And I was like, for my second Paragon, I want to make it a little bit more hard on myself, and I decided to go bow assassin, specifically bow assassin. Like get good at shooting bow and arrow, do all that. And even then, I would say I didn't feel like there was some toxicity. There was only one moment where I thought it was a little, and they were like, "Hey, your garb is not up to standard for being an assassin. You're a really great assassin, but your garb that you wear." I mean, in Forest, I'd wear ghillie suits, and my thought of if you're an assassin that's not in a war area is like you want to dress up like a standard everyday person to blend with crowds. Like that's how I figured assassin. Like not like wearing a hood and mask and ninja in the night kind of thing. So then, I was a little bit kind of like, really, like this is how I want to portray it. But I understood it was my everyday garb, so I hired out some people to create the best, like not even B level, but like C level rendition of another Paragon assassin's garb, and I wore that. It's I was pretending to be that assassin, like like this is my disguise kind of thing, and that's what finally like got that last little bit pushed over. And I would say that was a very minimally toxic experience from 1 to 2 Paragons even. It took a longer time, but I mean, I did that to myself, and I expect my third one is going to be even harder because I'm planning to get a Paragon healer as my next big goal, and that's going to be with 0 resurrects. That's my goal. 0 res healer to get Paragon, just to go full offense and see how it goes.
Okay.
I'll see how long I pursue that, but we'll see.
Necro's the way to go.
Yeah, you go Necro and steal life, so you have unlimited steal life, and you just crowd control and abeyance people. And I know in the healer one they said it was a meme spec, but you know what? I'll see if the meme spec can do well. You never know. But yeah, so I mean, the path to that hasn't seemed very toxic. The path to getting up to my 7th warrior so far has not seemed terribly toxic. I mean, there have been I've seen some people get upset in Polaris tournaments. I mean, there will be people that get upset. I think when I get upset at tournaments, I usually just walk away and like cool off a bit. There's only one tournament. This was years ago where I felt that somebody shrugged my shots pretty hard, and I just drove off from the tournament altogether. Like I did the classic, like, yeah, I'm taking my ball and going home because I'm really mad right now. And like I drove from Amro to back to Little Chute because I was living there at the time. And
okay, so
but even that hasn't felt too toxic yet. But I'm at 7. Like as you said, 8, 9, 10. This is where it all happens.
It starts getting okay. So, Gus, you've been working towards a Paragon in, I'm guessing, a couple different classes, because I've seen you play a handful, and you are tactically intelligent. You know what to do. You know your abilities. You're good at the stuff.
His V7 Bard game was nuts.
V7 Bard. Can I have Mimic? I'm just kidding. Don't give me Mimic. I will terrify things.
Part of me wants it, but I don't. I know how bad and disgusting that was.
Augustus Legends in V7.
It was terrible. I'm glad we never go back to that.
Okay. So your path towards Paragon Hood, have you felt toxicity on that anywhere near the level of the Warlord?
Yeah, I mean, because I brought it up with people, and every time the response is you don't portray the class. And I've brought different garb for it. I've done stuff like that, and then I get the same response. So I'm just like, whatever then. If if that's not good enough, I'm still gonna have fun dominating the field playing this class. Like, yeah, it doesn't bother me. But if you tie it into a bellhood, into a knighthood, now I'm gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna go do it. I'm gonna keep dominating the field. I'm gonna try even harder, which means I'm gonna dominate the field more, and going to, try and be that tactical person and not let others, and maybe step over people, and not too much. Hopefully, I don't know. I'm gonna be a better person, a better knight. But yeah, that's everything has just been, you don't betray the class. You don't role play.
Can I
You don't
ask
do
what
this.
class you were going for? Just out of
Uh,
curiosity.
Paladin,
Like-
healer, a couple others.
Okay, because
And like I get responses all the time of, "Oh man, when you play this class, it's deadly," or they'll be like, "Oh, you remember that one game you did this?" Like, I get all of that stuff, but it just
yeah, because like
all
a
I
lot
get
of
is
our rules of play for Paragon does show that you're just not just. I'm not gonna say just, but it's like it does say that it's a word to a player for consistently being an excellent example of the order in full class battle games. A player should look like, roleplay, and be highly effective at playing
Yep.
their order. And if you're dominating the battlefield over and over and over, and you're bringing garb to the field over and over, like to show that you are playing this class, like it isn't just Gus is wearing his standard tunic, puts on a blue sash, and says, "I'm a bard now." But if you bring if you bring out like even like things to feel like an instrument, like you have maybe like a lute or a recorder, probably something
I mean, when I was
plastic so in
doing,
case it breaks. But you know what I mean? Like if you're bringing stuff out like that, like I mean, this kind of goes into like Paragon chats in general. Like if you're going above and beyond to show that you look the part, and if you're also getting the look the part bonus for your class, well then.
Yeah, I mean, I was like what I can think of off the top of my head is assassin. When I was doing that, I had a hood, and then it was like a half cape, and then I had 2 satchels across both shoulders. Each one contained like 30 different throwing weapons, and then garb pants that contained 20 something throwing weapons, and then I had like 2 swords on my belt, but I never picked them up. And I just would do that role play and just chuck throwies at people, and I would get looked apart and everything, but I
So
was
this
always
sounds
told,
like a culture issue.
and
In my
it
opinion,
might be a
like as
culture,
a player, it
but
sounds like it could be a culture
yeah.
thing, and that's
that is something that that's something that's going to have to be addressed. As if we
Yeah.
look at Paragon as the quick, dirty answer, Paragon is already almost not standardized across kingdoms. Like Polaris, for example, we really want you to be like the best on the battlefield, but we don't care about your garb nearly as much. Like I got a Paragon bard by just making a hood. Like that's what I added to my regular garb, and then I was like, I'm gonna support you, and people gave me a Paragon. I didn't really embody bard. The only thing I did weird was just rap during some of the chants, and that was about it. Like our standards are very, very different across different levels. So if we make a belt about it, we might have to be more standardized. Okay, so I want to get to this final question, then Teflon, I want you to get your thought up. Lily, you have Warlord and 4 Paragons. Is that what it is? Archer, Assassin, Barbarian, Warrior? Yeah. Did you feel any toxicity that was similar to the Warlord path on those paths for Paragon?
Frankly, the Paragons are easy. By like super easy. I'm gonna get a 5th one, no problem. And whatever class, it doesn't matter. And that's a little confident or cocky or whatever. The point is like at a certain point, once you understand all of the little things that go into making what people look, it's not a very stressful thing to do if you don't make it very stressful. It's fun. You jump in the game, you dress up, you goof around. As I talked about in some of the Paragon classes, I mean, I would dress up as a rice farmer, and I would chop down little trees, and I'd carry around little bushels of things and sweep the woods. And I had a picnic in the middle of a battle game, and I go questing in the middle of battle games, and it's just about your creativity. And if you're real creative, great. I have the fortunate, or not the fortune, whatever, the fortune or I had the time put into the martial side of things to get very good at the fighty part. And because I'm good at the fighty part, the martial Paragons are pretty easy. It's easy to shine in any fighting class because I'm good at fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And So, but anyways, no, there's no pressure to perform and be like, well, when are you getting your next Paragon, or why aren't you a Paragon? At least not from my perspective. It was always about this other thing that was the high focus.
A real quick interjection.
Yeah,
It
do it.
is a recommendation as well in this specific proposal, in our final proposal, to have, if you are going a route of Paragons, one of the many routes that can be mixed and matched, that a caster class should
Sure,
be
my
highly
my
considered.
archer should be a druid, but like, it just is
Yeah,
what it
no,
is. Like I had shot relentlessly through 7/7. Like my first year and a half, that was all I did because I was terrible at fighting, and I found that druid was a better bow class in 7/7 by like a
You're
light
Lily with the squid hat, if I remember correctly.
foot head. It just was, it was a better class for how I played archer, and since I played archer
Yeah.
highly mobile inside the lines of fighting, I like the crowd control. And then of course archer now in V8 has its own crowd control, so it's just doing what I was doing with druid because druid did it better at the time. And then I got my Paragon in archer, which I mean, like, whatever. It was shooting a bow. Oh, the wizard or druid or whatever, easy. I can go play all of the things of how druid is played, and I can also go play Avatar of Nature and then just ruin whatever with martial prowess.
Well, then
Like,
it sounds like you're qualified. I don't.
it's no problem. I am not concerned about a new bellhood. Do it. I'll have it. Like, I'll get it super fast. There's no problem. I'm not concerned at all. But then again, I don't think Crown is very hard. I don't think Flame is very hard. I don't think Serpent is all that hard. I mean, Serpent's harder because I'm less good at that, but I would just apply myself real hard and eventually would probably do it. But then again, that's how I look at things. So.
Right. So what we've seen so far is that the level of toxicity in the Warlord path has definitely been exponentially more than the Paragon path at the moment.
Sure, because Paragon doesn't equal anything. It's bragging rights. I'm good at battle games. Yeah.
Right. But this is all coming from people that have been in the game 5+ years. I'm interested in seeing what Paragon means to newer players, and if we can think back to that a little bit. I know that I looked at Paragon as like a few steps below knighthood, when it's really not. Like, when I didn't fully understand the whole pecking order of our game, I thought Paragon was almost like the Battlegame Knight, just a little less. You didn't get to wear a white belt, but you got to be real fancy with the silver trim. That's what I remember thinking as a new player. And now I think about it as just like did you hit the boxes? Did you do well in the battle games? Are you efficient with your stuff? Did you put in some time and be good at it? Great. Continue on your way and get a Paragon. I'm wondering what, and then I'm going somewhere with this. Stick with me. If we're seeing that the result of really forcing a path on Warlord has done, would it be almost better to make the Night of the Battle even more open-ended? Like, we still have some guidelines, but be even more open-ended to allow for the same kind of freedom and less toxicity that we see in the other battles. And I want Annette to answer this first, because this is your proposal through data. I want your opinion on it, not based on the data, actually.
I'll do my best, and like with the caveat that you said, a personal opinion not based on the data. I personally say that the type of definition we have through the service builds or the crafting of builds framework we should adopt through all of the ladders. Did find that respondents did want a structured level by level list, so that's what we wrote, but this should also feel free to jump in. If I had just been sitting down to write this with no data, definitely would have gone with, for first example, for Masterhood, here's your new ladder. Magnus, do you want to jump in with your opinion?
Yeah, I'll jump in a little bit opinion, and then I will go a little bit data, because this does lead into one of the almost concerned things I heard as well, so I want to make sure I get that. So, my opinion on it is that I feel the proposal is rather open-ended
Mhm.
as it is already, like as it's written right now. There's 4 relatively distinct ways. I'd say technically 3, because I feel individual performance within a battle, you're probably going to pick up a Paragon or 2 along the way with individual performance. Whereas you have battle gaming tournaments specifically at more of the higher level for kingdom level ones. You have the leadership of commanding and like being that tactical person of like, this group of people goes here, this one goes here, this one goes here, and then there is the Paragon path as well. And I say these all as paths, but they can actually be mixed and matched. You could have one Paragon and be an extremely brilliant tactician and get your masterhood that way. You could just be that really, really great tactician who, you bounce around classes and you fill whatever role is needed for your team to be successful. So you never really have a Paragon because you're always bouncing around. But because of that, you've shown that you have great tactical skills and you have really good battlefield prowess as well, or at least acceptable enough to be able to survive, just keep commanding orders so Gus doesn't come around and kill you in the first 30 seconds. If you're showing that, that also can lead to this masterhood path. And I know that a lot of this is saying, hey, default to Paragon, we'll default to Paragon, and that's a worry. But I think we've shown here that a lot of people have this worry. And if that is a worry, I mean, it's not a worry in our data. I'm saying a lot of people in this chat that we're having have this worry. If that is a worry, though, all of us as individuals are responsible for adding to the culture of our kingdom and to the culture of Amtgard as a whole. And I believe that if this is a worry that people will have, or if we see something like that would be happening, that we would be able to switch that path. I don't even think it's going to be a thing that will come up because there are so many people that are saying this could happen in this chat. So I mean, again, in this chat we have people saying that will happen, but if we found that the majority of Amtgarders were like, hey, it's going to default to Paragon, well, then you know that if a lot of people are thinking that way, that it will do that, then you also have a lot of people that will put up a resistance or an opposition to it if you do get that monarch who does start doing it that way, or a COK that starts doing it that way. And it does come to fostering our culture, what we as Amtgarders and what we as like Amtgarders in our kingdoms want to see.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I really see in this. And that's why I think that it is still relatively open-ended. There are a set of recommendations, and I feel that it's rather solid the way it is.
Okay, so Teflon, you had a point earlier that you wanted to point out. Is it still relevant, or did we cover it?
No, it got covered.
Okay. So this is our last question of the written questions, and I've been working kind of circling.
Sorry.
I've been working around it. Okay. And it's a real hard question because we still don't have a good answer for it at the moment. If we know that toxicity is most likely to occur because of the high level of competitiveness that is going to be created, how do we keep it off the battlefield, or how do we limit it to specific battlefields so that we maintain our populace? Because our battle games draw most people. How do we maintain our populace and maintain our numbers on the field? I know this is kind of a like, how do we answer a question that doesn't yet have an answer? But I'd like opinions and just how we might be able to fight this. And I want to start with the Warlords because they have the experience with the real competitive toxicity. So, Gus, you want to go
Magnus.
first?
Yeah. The only, I mean, how are we fighting the toxicity in the world? Community, communication, communication, and trying. And that is disagreeing with me on that. At least that's how I'm trying to fight it, is to communicate, and get people talking about fighting in terms of their differences, in terms of the fact that there is also toxicity from the top down on who's good enough. I try to communicate and just stand up for the people that whenever I hear it. but it's difficult to fight toxicity in a very, very hyper competitive setting. And if there's a better way, I am more than willing to use my platform as a warlord and a sword knight to help and to fight for it. But I haven't found one yet beyond just trying to talk and communicate.
Lily?
So we are all human to some degree. I'm sure there's people who feel otherwise. It could be a space alien, and that's okay. That'd be super cool. But we are going to fail, and we are going to treat each other poorly. I would like to think that consistently that's the toxicity thing isn't generally always this raging issue of every second of every minute of every time that we do things. If it was, we wouldn't play this thing. We wouldn't have so much fun. I mean, 90% of my time I am fighting somebody and I'm making all my friends on the field. Like I'm terribly awkward in just a regular conversation, but I do very well when it comes to being involved with hitting them with the phone thing. So it's not all toxic. It's not all negative, right? Like I can pretend and say like, or not pretend, but I can say it's all been very, very challenging. Sure, it has its challenges, but I think the simplest stuff that I have been doing that would say, I guess, combats toxicity to some degree is can't speak. Generally being fairly positive. Again, human, I fail, but doing my best to generally be mostly positive and encouraging. I give so many people a relentless and endless amount of my time at AmpGuard, out of AmpGuard, the amount of and Charlie, I am aware that you had asked questions and that I haven't gotten back to you, but to be honest, I didn't get back to Ty either. So like, I'm doing a great job. But I tend to spend a lot of time doing video review with people that ask. I was opening my house during COVID to people who wanted to come and fight and wanted a safe space to do this where they wouldn't be ridiculed or crucified for wanting to continue their passion. And we did so in a safe format. But I'm also not going to lie to you because I'm a realist here and they can come to my house and I don't care. I'm not worried about it. And I've spent time with many, many people working and practicing and giving them extra time and doing that on the side. And doing it at events. And I, a long time ago, after seeing so many of my AmpGuard heroes get approached by so many people asking for time and effort and all of this, and then being just worn out, going to events and not having time to do anything that they really want to do because they're relentlessly bombarded by individuals who want to learn and are doing the same thing and want to improve. I've seen them be tired. I've seen them have to say no. And I had said that I never want to have to tell somebody no, and I break myself to try to do this. So again, relentless amounts of effort, time, and positivity towards these people and trying to continue to push the thing that I love so very, very much in this game. That I think helps. And I think that anyone that is in that position, it doesn't have to be a warlord, it doesn't have to be a sword knight.